Hi, Mariah. It's Betsy. Can you hear us? Just testing.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Great. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I'll be there in 10 or 15.
Okay, great.
Thanks. Betsy, just to say that I could.
Welcome to the October 30th, 2024 meeting of the Brookline School Committee. We'll start with our consent agenda, which I always forget to move, so I'm going to do that right away before I forget. So I would like to move the consent agenda. Do I have a second?
I second it.
Okay. All right. Stevens, the second. I'd just like to point out a couple of gifts and grants that we're voting to accept tonight. One is a gift of $125,000 from an anonymous donor to the Food Services Department to support the Zero Waste Initiative. And Stephen, I don't know if you would like to say anything about that.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
Yeah.
So this has been a donation that has been in the works for a long time. And I think, first of all, I want to credit Food Services Director Sasha Palmer with the initiative to make this happen. As a result of it, we're going to have a 3-year pilot for a school Food Services Sustainability Coordinator, a position that's being filled by Rebecca Salguero. And she's already done a lot with that position. The amount is significant too. As you said, it's $125,000 for 3 years, and that allows us to do a lot towards food services related to sustainability. So I just want to say that I think it's a pretty big move for PSB to have this position and to complete the activities towards sustainability under the Food Services Department with it.
All right, thanks, Stephen. The grant I'd like to mention is the fiscal year 25 METCO grant of $2.355 million. That's also part of tonight's consent agenda. So does anyone else have comments or questions about the consent agenda before we vote? All right, seeing none. Mariah?
Yes.
All right, Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. And the other item I'd like to point out under administrative business is that the 25-26 draft calendar is posted along with this week's agenda. We're not discussing it this week. We'll be taking that up for a third reading and possible vote at our next meeting on November 14th. But we've got it posted this week in accordance with our policy, which tells us to post the calendar together with the agenda of the meeting before the one at which we take a vote. So I just wanted to mention that. All right, with that, we'll move to the superintendent's report. Dr. Guillory, the floor is yours.
Thank you and good evening, everyone. I will share my screen here and try to move quickly so that we can get to our spotlight on excellence tonight. So before we walk through the actual slides, I want to share out an election message that we shared with PSB educators this afternoon, and a similar type of message will go out to families this week in our community message. Greetings, PSB. As we approach the election on November 5th, we want to provide all educators with resources to engage in post-election teaching and learning with their students. This work is directly connected to a broader project focused on our district's collective response to emerging world events. The lessons that are shared below were created by K through 12 PSB educators this past summer, and we are eager to put them to use in our classrooms and gather feedback on how they will meet our students' needs. Our mission in the public schools of Brookline is to educate and inspire every student to lead a fulfilling life and make positive contributions to our world. Part of that mission includes providing opportunities for students to develop an understanding of how to meaningfully participate in our democracy. The development of one's civic identity and learning how to engage in one's community are critical components of a student's educational experience. On November 6th, PSB students in grades pre-K through 12 will come to school with varying degrees of understanding about the election and the potential results. To that end, we have provided lessons for use in grades pre-K through 2, grades 3 through 5, grades 6 through 8, and grades 9 through 12. In grades 6 through 12, social studies teachers are strongly encouraged to lead a lesson that provides space to reflect on the up-to-date election results, acknowledging that we may not have a clear result the day after the election. The lessons shared are below, and teachers may also work with their curriculum coordinator to develop individualized lessons for their class. Grades 6 through 12 social studies teachers will also have time to work on their lessons collaboratively on the professional development day. Pre-K through 5 teachers are also welcome to use the lessons linked in support of student exploration after the election. Please use your discretion for utilizing these materials and previously shared election resources in such a way that both provides the necessary time and space for students to process while not disrupting the overall flow of the school day. We are committed to maintaining a safe and supportive learning environment for all students. At each school, we'll have a dedicated space where staff and students can go to reflect and process their emotions, access support from a counselor or clinician. Our counselors and clinicians will work with individuals and small groups of students who want or need additional support. If you have any concerns regarding a student or colleague, please reach out to a school leader or member of the clinical team. As we navigate these experiences together, let us continue to model respect, empathy, and open-mindedness for our students and to each other. Thank you for your dedication to fostering a safe, inclusive environment where all voices are valued and supported. So that message went out to staff today, and like I said, a similar message will go out to families Friday. So for our update tonight, we want to highlight from the Office of Teaching and Learning is seeking pre-K through 5 teachers, literacy specialists, and librarians, special educators, and 6 through 8 ELA teachers and EL teachers. Looks forward to seeing them on Tuesday, November 5th from 8 to 10:30 as we continue our professional learning experiences. We will be joined by our new Teacher Center colleagues, Zakia Brown and Lynette Henderson. Tuesday's session, Achieving District Literacy Goals, the Power of a Knowledge-Rich Curriculum and Structured Literacy, will build upon their experience, explore valuable concepts, and allow our educators to practice new processes and tools for implementing high-quality literacy instruction and support. I noticed it, so I was making sure. Key topics include gaining a clear understanding of public schools of Brookline vision for literacy, exploring how anti-bias texts can be integrated into a knowledge-building curriculum, and reflecting on how our identities influence our teaching practices and beliefs. From the Office of Educational Equity, OEE would like to recognize the tireless dedication and commitment of the middle school faculty and equity teams at Lawrence, FRR, and Runkle. It's a true privilege to partner with our incredible teachers, administrators, and staff as we all seek to develop our practice further and serve all students with excellence. OEE would like to thank Veri Hawkins, grade 5 teacher at Driscoll, for representing the Brookline Educators for Educator Diversity at the quarterly Massachusetts Partnership for Educator Diversity October membership meeting. At the consortium, which was attended by 50-plus school districts, Veri shared the efforts of the in-district group, prioritizing this work in recruitment and retention, as well as critical need for representation of educators and students. From OEE as well, Lawrence, FRR, and Runkle are well into their equity cycles. Middle school staff, as well as equity leads, guidance counselors, vice principals, and principals have already completed modules on community building circles and addressing harm or conflict resolution circles. With the support of school-based administration and OEE, middle school staff have facilitated and participated in grade-wide community circles with students and implemented a consistent practice of community building circles in advisory. I've also started another round of school visits. This time I'm going into 4th and 5th grade classrooms and have just started that this week, so I look forward to that cycle continuing. I'll be at BHS tomorrow, and my goal is to, over the course of the year, I told Anthony this is somewhat, I told head of school Meyer, this is somewhat ambitious, but over the course of this year, over my visits at the high school, I would like to be able to get to see all departments. Doesn't mean I'm going to hit every single classroom, but I'd like to be able to get into all departments across the high school this year. So that's a goal that I have when visiting the schools there. So with that, concludes the superintendent's report tonight, and I'd like to move to our spotlight on excellence as we have members here. Tonight, we are very pleased to shine the spotlight on excellence this evening to Brookline High School's Fiction and Film course. Joining us this evening is Rob Primer, the teacher of Fiction and Film. I see Evan Monceau, teacher of Fiction and Film. I see Jason Montrose, Fiction and Film. Sophie Blum, Coolidge Corner Theater Educational Director. Fiction and Film is a course that Rob Primer co-created with a librarian, digital video teacher Lynn Cohen, now retired. The first class ran in 2009 and has been a powerful way to engage students who have good ideas and insights, but may have struggled to communicate those when the class texts were books. Rob has found that because of the accessibility of film, many students who have struggled in English in previous courses find their voice in this one. Evan Masu, one of the teachers of the course, has worked in collaboration with the Coolidge Corner Theater to develop Coolidge classroom programs to support existing curriculum in a variety of disciplines, including STEM, world language, and the humanities, while simultaneously engaging media literacy skills and foundation of cinema studies. Earlier this year, Rob and Evan took their fiction and film students to the Coolidge Corner Theater to see a film. The students screened Diddy, a funny, irreverent, and affecting film about the first generation teenagers navigating the joy and chaos of adolescence as seen through the lens of a 13-year-old Taiwanese American boy. Students engaged in a pre-film presentation, film screening, and post-film discussion. As an added bonus, students receive free popcorn and lunch. This type of collaboration is an excellent example of the district's strategic goal number 2, to develop and implement culturally responsive community engagement plan to foster connection and caregivers to the school, district, and the community. At this point, I will turn the mic over to Jason, Rob, Evan, and Sophie so that we can learn more about this innovative course.
Rob, you got to go first because you are the godfather of this.
Thank you, school committee, for having us. Thank you, Superintendent Guillory, for recognizing our work. The course I've had a hand in for quite a while, but this partnership, and she's below me in the Zoom, Sophie Blum has been instrumental in this partnership. Without her, there is no partnership. So the Coolidge Corner Theater has made tremendous outreach to the high school. Their renovation is fabulous, and they've renovated more than a building. This whole program is a new renovation of how to partner locally, how to bring more students into the theater again, to break again through the COVID sort of morass that we've dealt with for several years, to bring people back into the theater and into the public space. And I couldn't be more happy with the way Sophie has invited us in, and not just this class. Other classes, other teachers within the school have also partnered to help develop this program. We were just very lucky to be sort of the test case for it. And I will pass the mic.
Evan, do you want to hop in? Because I know you have a class to teach.
Yeah.
Or
no, that's
do you
okay.
wanna-
They're still not here yet. The class is not till 6:30, so they're okay.
Thank you so much, Rob, for that generous introduction, and to everyone for having me here, particularly to you guys to these awesome teachers for inviting me along. I'll just say that, I started Coolidge Classroom in the hopes of give teachers the ability to offer their students the kinds of experiential learning that I wanted to provide in my own classroom, but never had the bandwidth or the resources to. So our goal at the Coolidge is to eliminate as many barriers to access for teachers and students as possible, so that they can enjoy cinema as it's meant to be seen, and have the opportunity to engage with curriculum and with peers in memorable new ways. Beyond using film as a teaching tool for core disciplines in ways that I know Rob's course really takes advantage of. Right, film has provides a unique gateway into analysis and academia that is particularly engaging and accessible for all students. But our program also gives students the opportunity to connect across disciplines and districts. So upcoming programs, we are hosting the BHS GSA in conversation with the GSA from Margarita Muniz Academy. And I'm really excited about the ways that we can use cinema to generate dialogue and community. This is a free field trip program that includes lunch and supplemental resources, and none of it would be possible without the teachers who move mountains to bring their kids here, and who were fundamental in getting the program up and running. Mr. Mousseau, along with teachers from Brookline's World Language Department, Science, and ACE program, all provided crucial feedback up until that made this program possible. So thank you again to Mr. Primer, Mr. Montrose, and Mr. Mousseau for making this program possible.
I'll go really fast because Evan it'll be a mic drop moment. I've actually had the good fortune to co-teach with both Evan and Rob, so it's been awesome to kind of learn from them. But terms as being a special ed teacher, as part of the group, is that what I enjoy about film or even collaborating with Sophie now that we're able to go down to Coolidge is that now it becomes more accessible to everybody. And so maybe I'm not the greatest writer on the planet, or I'm not the greatest reader, but we all can watch TV, we all can consume it, and we all have something to say about it. So that's what makes this program wonderful, this collaboration awesome. So can't thank you enough, Sophie, because before Rob and I went to Cambridge, and at one point Evan and I went downtown to watch a movie. And every time we've gone someplace other than Coolidge, it's been kind of a disaster. So we can't thank you enough.
Yeah, thank you, Sophie. And Sophie highlighted, right, we got to be the pilot case for the program, but the development of the program itself has been in the works for over a year now, working with Sophie and other teachers at the high school, other educators across the Boston area. And Sophie mentioned the program is free field trips for students with that lunch, with that popcorn included, which is huge, but also like teachers working with the Coolidge to develop this program were provided a stipend and a membership at the theater. So the support from the theater as a partner to the district has been really, really amazing in terms of the type of collaboration that's possible between our programs. The last thing I would add is, as what was really exciting for me as part of this piloting things was the opportunity for students to do some really authentic work in developing a program, right? Part of their work after attending the screening was not just to discuss the film, but was also to say, hey, you got to be the first people ever to try this. Write a feedback letter right now to say, like, here's what went well, and here's what we think you want to try next, or how you could continue to develop things. And that opportunity for real authentic written work is something that I find really valuable for students. And so they got to engage in that, which was really, really special as the guinea pigs, the pilots for this opportunity for other students in the future.
And the bonus was Sophie provided a lesson also. It got even better at the end. So we got to be like assistant teachers running around and getting other people to participate. So want to thank you also for that, Sophie, doing the lesson plan for us.
And tremendous flexibility to bring in, on greater dates, more students. Again, the Coolidge, this program, it's a gem within this community. And, the fact that we're able to make a small use of it is been fabulous. So again, it's great.
Thank you. You are also kind. Your students' feedback, fueled the changes that we're making to this program as it goes, and your continued collaboration is what gives me a reason to keep working. So thank you so much, and I'm really excited to continue working with these three and the high school, middle school, and the community beyond.
Any school committee members like to ask a question or make remarks? I just see general joy around the table. That's about the sum of it. Yeah.
And thank you, Dr. Fortuna, for identifying our Spotlight on Excellence with this group. So the Public Schools of Brookline Spotlight on Excellence is awarded to BHS Fiction and Film course with deep appreciation for spearheading this innovative program, which promotes community collaboration to provide a culturally responsive community engagement plan, which fosters connections among caregivers, schools, and the district and the community. So again, congratulations to you all. And with that, that concludes the superintendent's report and Spotlight on Excellence.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Guillory, and thank you to our guests. Thanks for joining us and for your work for our students. So this brings us to public comment. We have 5 speakers signed up this evening, so each will get the floor for 3 minutes. And our first speaker is Julian Ricco.
Thank you.
Hello all, my name is Julian and I'm a representative of the Brookline High School AI and Education Club. 2 years ago, ChatGPT knocked on the door of Brookline High School. Students quickly learned of its power and teachers struggled to combat it. Plagiarism and misuse of AI pose serious threats to the learning of Brookline students. A coherent and concise town-wide AI policy would help schools and teachers address this issue. Additionally, without a town policy, students could be confused on how to properly use it. In Hingham, a student sued their high school because they were penalized for using AI. However, an outright ban fails to address the problem because kids will still use it secretly. Furthermore, it doesn't prepare kids for the future where they will inevitably have to use AI responsibly and effectively. Therefore, I'm advocating for the creation of a use-based town-wide policy that teaches students how to use AI. Due to the fast development of the technology, we have to be able to adapt to new capabilities of AI with a set of values in stone with which to judge different uses. Exact plagiarism directly from an AI should always be cheating. Uses vary though, and we have to consider creative scenarios where AI is used as a thought partner in brainstorming, a tutor in problem solving, and an editor in revisions. Studies have shown that structured AI use in high school doesn't hinder student performance on tests, while unstructured or free-rein use does hinder it. An AI policy should draw clear lines between these beneficial uses and direct cheating. We also believe that in order to create AI policies, we must reflect on the value of education. I hope everyone can agree that school is vital for developing necessary cognitive skills such as critical thinking, creativity, comprehension, etc. However, the role school plays in preparing students for the professional world and their careers is less clear. Brookline High School prides itself on its excellence and the success of its students. Part of preparing students to be excellent is teaching them how to use new technology like AI. In both educating and preparing, certain uses of AI can play an impactful and beneficial role. The choice of what uses we allow depends on what the purpose of school is. AI is moving fast and it's powerful. We must harness its power for good instead of letting it run rampant. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julian. I just wanted to remind folks that we do listen very attentively to public comment, but our policy is that we don't respond on the spot. So, not hearing from us doesn't mean that we haven't been paying attention. Okay. All right, our next speaker is Tal Kennett.
Hi, can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, we can.
Sorry. So, Tal Kennett, Pierce BHS parent. So I want to talk about the calendar very briefly. I watched a discussion about it. And next school year, June 18th is a Thursday, Juneteenth is a Friday. The last day is proposed to be the Monday, June 22nd. We've had no snow days in about 3 years now. There's a good chance that the Monday, June 22nd will remain the last day of school. So I think it's pretty obvious. This means June 18th will in fact be the last day and in practice, and June 22nd will be a day in the books with very low attendance. And even if families aren't actually going away, they will be signing up for camps, and camps are a full week thing. So I think the introduction of Juneteenth as a federal holiday really means we need to aim to have the last day of school by June 18th. Because in practice, every day after that will have very little to no learning. And learning is the foremost mandate of schools. So next year, we're actually kind of lucky because we have an early Labor Day and 2 of the current 5 Category 1 holidays are on a weekend. What happens when all 5 are on a weekday and we have a late Labor Day? There's a whole additional week of school in June, probably guaranteeing that we need to go well past June 20th in spite of it being a very low learning period. At the meeting, several of you raised some really great points. First, that the line between what is a Category 1 versus Category 2 holiday has become more and more blurred and poorly defined. This means there's probably more requests for Category 1 holidays that are probably in the pipeline, and rightly so. Second, while the initial justification for closing schools on a Category 1 holiday was low attendance, it's not actually clear anymore what attendance would in fact be during the original 3 Category 1 holidays, so the Yom Kippur, Rosh Hashanah, and Good Friday. So making this definition much harder to chase. And several of you also mentioned this is a hard conversation. And the reason it's hard is because taking something away is always hard. But not being fair is also really hard. So I therefore would like to urge you to dare to go into directions several of you mentioned. Close schools only for mandated federal and state holidays and professional development days. Save as many learning days as possible in the middle of the school year when they actually count the most. There are at least two ways I think to do this. One is to just redefine category 1 to no longer mean school is closed. And second is to make all the holidays category 2 and then fix category 2 so that students who don't attend on these days are accommodated, but without impeding learning for the rest of the students who are attending. And I really trust that you guys can do this. And so that's the note about that. And just as an aside, I counted 34 lines below the calendar and 2 columns of 17. This is really hard to read and it's sort of a mess. And it would be great if you could like categorize them by colors so people could actually see what this calendar means. That's it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Kennett. People are laughing because you ended exactly on the 3-minute timer. So, all right. Our next speaker is Bushra Yusuf.
Oh, there. Hi, I'm so sorry. That was a struggle. Hi, my name is Bushra Yusuf. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Okay. Hi, thank you so much for your time. And I'm gonna keep it very short because I was not very well prepared for this. But I'm here to speak about the after school program at Florida Rough and Ridley, the DaySep program. Uh, I just wanted to put in my input that it has actually greatly affected us in a good way. My son Zarun Yusuf goes there to FRR and he is in the 2nd grade and he has been part of the DaySep program ever since he started kindergarten. So I know this year there's a lot going on with it. I still have not gotten the whole story of it, but I know it has to do something with the rent and high rent and the program at the moment being suspended. So I would like to see if at all possible, whatever needs to be done. It's not just me. I have spoken to other parents and it helps us so much. We live in the Brookline housing and I know a bunch of the parents. I don't know if any of the parents are here from our side or not, but I can speak for them. It helps our students, our kids a lot. It helps us a lot with the schedule. And, you know, it keeps our kids active in a way because it gives them the after school opportunity to be still part of some sort of either after school homework help or sports, just to stay active and on their feet. I know winter coming up and my son has been questioning every single almost day, when are they going to start DaySep? When are they going to start DaySep? So if there's anything else I can say, I'm sorry, I don't have a speech prepared for this. I should have, I guess, but I'm requesting for everyone to please reconsider this. And I really want this program to be running again, whatever you guys on your end have to do about this. So I have other parents. I don't know who else is here. This is my first time joining a meeting like this. So please work on it. And if possible at all, to reopen the program as soon as possible because we're desperate for it. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. Yusuf. And next up, we have Sadaf Kazmi.
Hi, everybody. As was mentioned, I'm Sadaf Kazmi. I'm the mother of 2 students at Lawrence. I was here a few weeks ago to speak about the 2025-2026 school calendar. I'm here again tonight in response to the open meeting complaint that was made against the school committee concerning the discussion of the school calendar on October 10th. And I am definitively not an expert in town government or its procedural requirements, so I just want to acknowledge that up front. But I was a bit surprised and disappointed by the open meeting complaint, and so I wanted to make 2 points on the record for this group and for anybody watching, which I'm sure there are many people watching. The first is that there are a lot of engaged members of the Brookline community, which I love, and who have a passion and interest in the public schools. I like to think I'm one of those people, although my consistent engagement is, sometimes not that consistent. As a result, people review the school committee agenda and other documents that are made public on the town website. On October 10th, the school committee the school calendar rather was on the agenda. And in fact, the entire reason that so many people showed up to discuss the 2025-2026 school calendars precisely because it was on the school committee agenda, which was published on the town website, and not because of any additional or inside information on what would be discussed or what would be the nature of that, of the meeting and the discussion within the meeting. The second thing that I wanted to share with the school committee and more broadly with the members of this town is that I do believe, and I also hope that others in this town believe, that there's space in this town for all of us. There really is. And that acknowledging and embracing that makes this town better and not worse. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Cosme. And lastly, we have Chiara Faronato.
All right. Good evening, everybody. Can you guys hear me?
We can.
Wonderful. Thank you for giving me some time. I'm a resident of Brookline. I have two boys in FRR, one in kindergarten, one in fourth grade. And like many parents, we chose Brookline for the quality of its public education. Yet last year, in the last year or so, we've seen some worrisome patterns towards taking resources away from the students. At FRR, the foreign language is not taught any longer for K through 5. The extended day program for kindergartners, which had access to the FRR library until last year, is now constrained to 2 kindergarten classrooms, thanks to the flexibility of those 2 teachers, which limits the kids' ability to use other spaces. And now, as Ms. Yousaf pointed out a couple of minutes ago, the daily after-school enrichment program at FRR, DASIP, has been suspended until further notice. Now, DASIP is the program I particularly want to emphasize today in my remarks, but I also want to point out the worrisome pattern. I understand that the email that parents received from DASIP only paints one side of the story, and I really don't want to take one side or the other. What I'm here to emphasize is that the kids and their families are really bearing the brunt of these breakdown in negotiations. The kids and their families are the ones that are left with no after-school activities that they have counted on for many years. And I struggle to believe that no agreement is better than a less than ideal agreement for both the school and the families of this community. As to the school budget, I'm actually an economist, so I understand that the school wants to monetize the spaces it has so that more financial resources can be collected to advance the mission of the school and maybe create, again, a foreign language program. But changes to rental agreements need to be carefully agreed upon. If a landlord doubled rent overnight, we would think it absurd, and other sources of revenues could equally be explored. For example, my understanding is that FRR is mostly closed during the weekends. Why not finding opportunities to monetize activities during the weekend, such as sports activities? That seems like an untapped source of revenue that could allow to subsidize some afternoon programs like DASIP. Now, I'd like to emphasize to the school committee that these type of decisions don't affect all kids and their families equally, but actually end up creating even more inequity in our community. That's because the rich and wealthy residents, I guarantee you, will pay anyway to be able to afford expensive foreign language programs outside of school, expensive alternative after school activities, and maybe even send their kids to private schools altogether. This pattern will leave behind those in our community for whom the public school and DASIP are really the only way through which their kids learn, discover, and explore during the weekdays. Now, I know, and I thank the Public School Committee for reaching out. I know the Public School Committee is working hard towards resolving this impasse. And tonight there's a vote to allow for flexibility in rental charges, which I hope will be approved. So I thank the committee for the work on making the school facilities accessible to students, both during but also outside of normal school hours. And I do look forward to DASIP being reinstated in early 2025. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Ms. Farinato. And that brings our public comment to an end for tonight and takes us to our segment on presentations and discussions of current issues. So our first current issue is going to be a discussion and possible vote to approve modifications to the mini CIP allocation for deferred maintenance. Helen, do you want to walk us through the background here?
So I think what I'd like to do is just sort of set the stage and ask Dr. Givens to walk us through the actual spreadsheets.
Sure.
I think that's probably a better way.
Okay.
The capital subcommittee, as many of you were there, met last week, and we discussed these CIP request for this year. As you can remember, usually we need to get that in by September, but we were given some dispensation due to a number of factors that were going on. The town felt it was okay that we could, as long as we voted tonight, could submit our CIP requests. The CIP requests, as you'll see pretty soon, are divided into different categories, and Dr. Givens will be going over that, and it's over a number of years. Just so that everybody knows, we did vote to recommend the CIP to the full school committee that you'll see, and asked Dr. Givens to fill in some pieces that had been left out, which she will be doing.
So Helen, does this mean that we're dealing with item A and item B together?
Yes.
Okay.
Well,
So,
B will follow A.
okay. I just wasn't sure whether what you've just said is about A, B, or both.
Well, it's sort of about both. We will discuss and see what was approved by the capital subcommittee, what information was lacking within there that people wanted to have, and then I will ask for a vote. Is that okay?
Okay, so we're discussing the FY26 CIP, also the mini CIP, in particular the deferred maintenance aspects of it,
Correct.
which we need to break out separately
Correct.
because of the way town meeting
But
structured
we're going to
their
have
vote.
to vote the full CIP request, which you'll see that Dr. Givens has that in one slide,
Okay.
okay? It sounds a little complicated. It's pretty straightforward, I think.
Yeah,
Dr.
so-
Givens, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. Betsy, can you? I'm visual, so I think it helps to,
Uh-oh.
a little tiny.
Here we do.
Yeah, so this process is different than what we've done in the past because the town graciously provided us with 2 years' worth of funds. We had requested money for FY25, and actually, initially, the town administration had provided us with another $4 million, you know, so we were kind of excited. But as it went through the process of town meeting, additional resources were allocated to us with an understanding that if we weren't going to spend the money exactly as presented, that we would go through this process where the school committee would review what the changes were. And then once you approve that, then we would go to the Board of Selectmen and we would notify the advisory council of these changes. And so part of the CIP vote tonight is regarding that approval process, which is different than the typical approval process. So we struggled a little bit trying to figure out, you know, how to present this since it was, you know, kind of uncharted territory, you know, how to present this information as clearly as we could. We got feedback from the capital subcommittee, and the document presented to you tonight reflects the feedback that they had provided to include information about last year, so there'd be clarity around how much money was approved at town meeting and people could tie all of that together. I also want to say that the deferred maintenance is part of the CIP. So the CIP is divided into several categories. Some are improvements and some are deferred maintenance. And the majority of the money that's set aside in the CIP is for the deferred maintenance. And so we spent a lot more time on that going through by school building, the types of things that we are seeing boots on the ground need to be attended to. So that's why time and attention is given to the deferred maintenance piece.
If I could just add one thing. So in years, actually in all my years on the school committee, we've only voted 1 year CIP every year. We've never had a 2-year amount of money to work with. So that's part of the issue that we're trying to work through to make sure that we maximize the use of these funds.
Right. And of course, when you're in the middle of developing a plan, you're using estimates. And then when you get into implementation, the costs may come in different, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. Sometimes as you drill down into a repair, you find that the scope of work changes. And so it modifies what you actually wind up doing. So all of those things result in prices being higher or lower, or our priority shifting, because something that might have been put in an out year, when we were looking at this last year, might need to be moved up because repair costs have gone out of the roof, or something has just failed. And so we have to be able to make those adjustments. So what we did, again, based on the feedback we received, is what you'll see in the deferred maintenance is we gave an explanation for what shifted, right? So people could follow along a little bit better for, what we had completed, what is still work that needs to be done. Some things we shifted out and some things we shifted in. And we tried to give an explanation for each of those moves so that folks, when they looked at it, could say, okay, in FY 25 and 26, these are the things we believe that were most essential to be done. And as we move through the year, we had to make some adjustments. And so this is how we would like to move forward with our deferred maintenance allocation for 26, and then the impact that that has on 27, 28, 29, up to 31. So that's what's before you. So there's 2 votes. The deferred maintenance component of that is, again, for you to, hopefully approve the recommendation for reallocating the funds already provided to us through town meeting. And then we would go to the Board of Selectmen. So that's 1 vote. And then the second, if you look at the document that is not as dense, the spreadsheet that's not as dense, it has our classroom capacity, it has FF&E, all of those part of our plan. Those are more for improvements as opposed to deferred maintenance. One of the new items that's listed there, well, actually it was there last year, is this request to have a long-term capital plan. We feel it's really important. We can provide our practitioner eyes to the work, but it's also good periodically to have somebody come in and conduct a study so that things that you don't see are added to the plan. And there's some schools that have been renovated and are more modern than other schools. And so we would like to have a fresh set of eyes look at that. In addition, there's some areas that we've talked about over the course of the last year plus that are areas where we would like to see improvements. One of those is our climate control in all buildings. We've made great strides. Thank you, building department and town, for supporting the funds for that, but we're not 100%. And so we want to make sure that those improvements are front and center. Also, we would, and so part of that study would be to call out, what our options are there. Also, gender inclusion bathrooms, that's a topic that's come up as well. And some of our schools have gender inclusive.
Susan, I'm sorry, climate control is a study? That's what that represents?
That would be part of it. That would.
Okay.
There's 2 parts to that.
Sorry, that's what I
There's-
thought, but then I thought you said it was a study just now, the FY 28 expenditure?
Yeah, so part of the long-term study would include a review of alternatives or ways that we could maybe consider getting ourselves to 100% in every school. So the study would include looking at that, gender-neutral bathrooms, and other things. And then we also, to put kind of park some money in the plan in 28 through 29 and 30. We also put a bucket of money so that once the study is done and they've identified ways to address that we would at least be flagging that, we'd anticipate that there would be monies required in out years. So the study for the upcoming year is really important because it will provide us with additional information that we can refine our requests for in those improvement areas. So FF&E, 75,000 we're requesting for that. And I think that concludes what we're asking for in FY26. That's in addition to the money we've already been allocated for deferred maintenance. So that's why there's two votes. One is to seek approval for a capital improvement plan for the areas that have not been funded for this year, and then to help us to be able to move forward with making modifications to deferred maintenance, which was already funded by town meeting. Is that clear as mud? Mm-hmm. Oh, good. Yay.
So just for those who don't know what FF&E is, it's furnitures, fixtures, and equipment. So it could be, it's mostly in this category, furniture like this last year we spent $150,000 on buying new tables for the high school cafeteria. So it would be those kind of big purchases that we need for certain schools. If it's just one or two things, I think we do that on our own. But we also, when we build a new school, we tend to furnish it and then use those furnishings that are still good from the old school to fill in where we need to. So just an FYI.
Before we move to questions and discussion, would someone like to make one or more motions?
I would love to make a motion. So we're going to do the first one first, motion one, that's on your sheet here, and that maybe you can put up on the screen, to approve the modifications made to the FY25-26 deferred maintenance project allocations as presented in the FY26 capital improvement plan, and submit this request to the select board at a duly noticed select board meeting for approval. So those are monies that were already appropriated, that we said we were going to use and weren't able to use last year, but we are going to use this year. And in order to use those monies, the select board needs to approve it.
You got
Does
it.
that sound good?
Yes.
Do we have a second? Thanks, Mariah. All right, any questions or discussion on this motion? Carolyn?
Thanks. I have a little question that's completely non-controversial. And thank you, Susan and Mariah and Helen, for pulling this all together and making it really clear. Even though this is something I've paid attention to for a while and I'm on the subcommittee, I'm always hanging on by a thread, and this is really helpful. I will just say it as an aside, because I even still struggle with some of the nomenclature. So maybe likely other people are brighter than me and don't struggle as much. But I do just want to say, so mini CIP and deferred maintenance is basically just maintenance. Like if you have a house and you got to make sure your furnace is working and you're patching holes in the roof and you don't have leaky pipes. So, and that's not a criticism of the nomenclature, but sometimes I think that sounds more complicated than, sorry.
And in the past, sometimes it was, because sometimes it was to make a new classroom. So it was walls and furnishings and everything that you had to do to split up a classroom and make it into two when we were growing. So that was another
That was
purpose.
inside of deferred maintenance, not
In the mini
capital.
CIP.
Okay. In the mini CIP, that makes
So
sense.
that's why it
Okay.
started
Yeah,
that
yeah,
way.
that term.
And then as we saw that there was maintenance that was, getting deferred, it sort of shifted a bit. But
That
it's
makes
both.
complete sense.
It's both.
That makes complete sense. Thank you. And I'm interested in the study, and I just wanted to know, super quick, I see it says town school long-term capital plan. So is that something that you or others are in conversation with our partners on the town side? And does that mean sort of looking at all of our buildings under one study, or like, or only what we call school buildings in that elusive definition of what a school building is?
Yeah, it was to look more broadly, so that we would have information that we could, use, not just schools, because we have the same taxpayer base, and so looking at it more holistically serves everyone. So when you're looking at sustainability, or, I don't know what the status of gender-neutral bathrooms are in the other buildings, but if that happens to be an area that needs attention, then we should be looking at all community spaces. So spoke with the town, and the town felt that that was an important thing to have move forward for town buildings as well. Some of them, I guess, have been, as ours, have been renovated more recently, but then there's older buildings, that may need the same type of a look. That way you'd have one firm that does that. You don't have a separate study here and a separate study there. It's really good if you can have one study done by the same party through the same set of eyes. So that's the idea.
All right, Mariah, and then Stephen.
Thank you, and thanks, Susan, for all the work that went into this. I have just a couple questions that popped into my head since we talked about this at Capitol. And one of them actually was, it's a question relating to what Helen just said, and a question that came up because I understood that this was deferred maintenance. However, what you just said was that it wasn't always deferred maintenance and included aspects of classroom capacity. But we have another line for classroom capacity, which is actually a code word for leases. And so I guess what I'm wondering is, there's only one thing in here that to me is like a gray area of deferred maintenance versus classroom capacity, which is the Lawrence locker room conversion, right? So it made me think, and this is probably, I'm sure this is incredibly annoying to bring up because if we moved that $250,000 from deferred maintenance to classroom capacity, it would upset the balance of what town meeting voted from last year. On the other hand, it would actually be like, it's just sort of like a appropriate descriptions kind of a thing. So I don't know what to make of that, but when you just said mini CIP was actually these other things, it sort of, I don't know, it engaged something in my head. In the interest of clarity, I wish we could move that 250,000 into classroom capacity, because that's what it's doing. I don't know, I'm just sort of throwing that out there as a thought of like how we're properly allocating.
I think we could look into that for next year, but I think at this point, we need to get this over to the select board and to Melissa to put together the total CIP.
I wonder though if there's an opportunity to work with Melissa to make sure that the wording that goes into the CIP might be flexible enough so that if for whatever reason someone were to complain that it shouldn't be in deferred maintenance, that the wording of classroom capacity wasn't just limited to leases, such that the dollar amount could be shifted over. Well, like, so we wouldn't lose the, and again, it's sort of just about like accuracy and
refining.
Yeah. And again, it would a little bit mess up the 2-year vote that town meeting took. But I feel like this is more like a procedural paperwork precision thing. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. That's my first comment. My second question is, you said the town supported the long-term capital plan. Is that being jointly submitted, or is that still being submitted by PSB, but with, like, what does that look like?
Well, we were the ones that submitted one last year.
And the year before.
And the year before, maybe
Right.
the year before, I don't know. Didn't see the one the year before,
Yeah,
so I don't.
but previously it wasn't a joint, it was a
Yeah.
schools one. So is this one jointly
Yeah,
submitted?
it's to say that there is some need on their part too to document similar things. So whether it's put here or there, we just, wanted to.
But they're endorsing it.
Yes.
Okay, great. And then my last question is just, and I should have asked this at Capitol, but I hadn't processed everything. For the climate control and gender inclusion dollar amounts that are in the out years, are those essentially just placeholders for now? Or have you actually sort of preliminarily allocated them into?
Yeah, we have identified the schools that have not had renovation projects.
Okay.
But we don't have like great detail. There's plumbing codes and everything that have to be looked at around that. We learned that when we were working on Lincoln this summer. And so that's what kind of triggered for us, hey, somebody needs to take a critical eye and look at, what are the options here? If we're going to be updating and renovating bathrooms that are in older buildings, then we should attend to that at the same time. And so that's really why we kind of pulled that out. Also recognizing, that there are improvements, and now you could say they're deferred maintenance because the wear and tear in those spaces are great. And so sometimes it's like Helen said, is it an improvement or is it a?
Right.
And so we were just really we keep trying to refine. And I think that as we refine, we have these conversations and then we all have more clarity around why we're putting what where. That one that you had mentioned has been a line item in the deferred maintenance budget for a very long time. And I know that there has been work that we were hoping to do anyways there. Some could be deferred maintenance just because the space needs that anyways, right? And some of it would be to look at it differently than what it is, which would also be part of the study. We have at the high school money set aside in the deferred maintenance budget for converting, I think, one space into another space, another type of space there. So we could look at that in different schools to make sure that we're looking at all of our spaces and making sure we're using them to leveraging everything to our best needs and uses at this time. So,
And just to follow up, is the gender inclusion, everything you have penciled in there, that's really bathrooms or it's
Yes.
other things? Just so it really is gender inclusive bathrooms as opposed to
yes,
gender inclusion?
unless they say locker rooms, for example, at the high school or something, or in another space. It could be that as well.
Thank you.
We weren't limiting ourselves, so we thought we'd be broader until we got the study done, and then we could again, refine it.
Stephen, and then perhaps we can vote on the first motion.
Thanks. I'm still in the beginner's course here. I'm still trying to make sure I understand the motion. So the motion is to approve the modifications and send this back to the select board. And the specific modifications is the actual modifications are represented best by those arrows on page 3. So what accounts for the differences? Are these just better understandings, more up-to-date understandings of costs and pushing it towards out years for what we didn't get to date? Is that a
Some is
fair summary?
update, so it's a combination of those. So some of it's update on costs. So for example, at the Runkle School, we had set aside $500,000 in FY26 to do flooring.
Yeah.
But when we evaluated the flooring there, there's some that's in fine shape. And so why would you tear it up and replace it if it's in fine shape? I mean, we want to use our taxpayer dollars, to the best benefit. And so that number has been reduced to $100,000 based on what the actual needs are. Well, that then frees up the capacity that was in that line to be allocated to something else. So some of it is refinement of scope of work and costs based on what we know now. And then others are, needs that we thought we could wait another year are in front of us now. We have an oven that needs to be replaced and a few other things in the kitchen, dishwasher and things like that need to be done now. We really can't wait. And so we move those things up, or they're newly identified because of course last year we didn't have a director of operations and I was just walking in. And so when Charlie and I worked with Mariah to put this together, we knew that there were things that we were missing. And so we said that, yeah.
So I guess I'm just maybe to rephrase it.
Okay.
So it's the number, it's the cost that's changing that we're seeking approval for, but it's also the period over which it's being spent. We also need to seek approval if we're distributing over different fiscal years. I guess that's what I'm trying to understand from the arrows, because we're pushing it to FY26. Do we need to seek? It was approved for 26 too. So this is just the cost differential that we're seeking
It's the
approval
cost
for?
differential and and if we were going to move or add a project, and we've added a few things here in order to get funding for it and move it between the different areas.
new items as
Then
well.
it's, right.
Okay.
So it's
thank you,
both.
Susan.
Short answer is it's
But
both.
we're not pushing anything outside the period during which the
There's-
work was expected to be done. We're not
There-
seeking approval
There
for
are
anything
two
like that.
items that we moved out that I noted, and they're in cafeteria and kitchen. And because we want to have this study done, to look at.
I see, and that's in the smaller,
Yes, so where
Okay.
you get, there's a notation section, I think, modifications,
got
I
it.
think.
That's why it's called a mini CIP.
Yeah, so I would say moved out 2 years, or I moved something in a year, or something like that on a particular line, so you would know what we've had to reprioritize, and we attempted to explain why.
Okay, thank you, Susan.
And nothing prevents us from requesting more changes as long as we go to the select board.
Correct.
And notify the advisory committee.
So once we get knee-deep in this work, if the pricing comes in better, we might have capacity again, and then we can shift, and likewise, things might not go favorably, so we might have to make further adjustments in certain areas.
All right, I think we are ready to vote on the first motion. All right, so Jesse,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
Mariah.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Helen.
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Val, are you there yet?
Yes, and I vote yes.
All right, and chair votes yes as well. So
Okay.
that passes. Would you like to make a second motion, Helen?
I'd be happy to. To approve the FY26 school capital improvement plan in the amount of $1,236,948 to fund the request for classroom capacity leases at $761,948, furniture, fixtures, and equipment at $75,000, and long-term capital plan at $400,000.
Do we have a second?
That should add up to the,
I saw Jesse's hand first, so he gets that honor. All right, is there any discussion, or are there any questions for this motion specifically? All right, I see none, so we can move to a vote. Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes, and I'm just hoping you will explore that bit with Melissa about,
I'll check
yeah,
with
just providing that flexibility so we don't get locked out by accident. Thank you.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, so we are through, I think, the first half of current issues. The second half is a series of budget updates and budget-related items. So Mariah, why don't I turn it over to you for this segment, and you can direct traffic.
Sounds good.
All right.
Okay, so everything here we discussed at Finance last Wednesday, and some of them are recommendations that came from the committee, and others are just brief reports. So you all have in the papers in front of you a summary of the FY24 budget status, the close report. And so the year ended up closing at an expenditure of 131.1 million, as you see in the third column there of expended. And I just want to provide a couple of updates that we talked about. So if you recall, the original budget was 130.7 million. There was a request made to advisory at the close of the fiscal year, just after the close in July, that had advisory committee do a reserve fund transfer of just under 494,000. And of that money, PSB ended up needing to use 405,000 to close the year. And as you see, there was a surplus at the end of just over 89,000. So I just want to highlight that while 405,000 is a large amount of money, it really represents 0.3%, so 0.003 of the budget off, so quite close to the overall budget. And of course, if we were 0.3% under, it would be a different story, but still it's a remarkable close for, and I want to say thank you to the team for all the hard work to bring that to the close. One of the things we talked about at Finance, one of the questions was, if you can see, there is surpluses and deficits in the categories over to the right, and I asked if that was informing the FY25 budget, and the answer was yes, and that's why the FY25 Q1 report, which we were going to see at Finance, but we did not, we will see it next month, and so that information is informing the FY25 budget, and we will get an update at finance next month on that. Any questions on the FY24 close, Carol?
What happens to the surplus? What happens to the surplus? Where does that 89,013 go?
So it gets rolled back into free cash, and then it gets certified, and then it gets redistributed into the waterfall.
Okay, that's what I kind of thought. And sorry, I should know this. Is there a free cash within the school department, or do you mean it goes back to the
Goes
town?
into the town.
Okay,
Yep.
thank you.
Any other questions on FY24 close? Susan, did I miss anything? Nope, okay, great. Next one, so possible vote to authorize the Finance Subcommittee Chair to review and approve grant applications between Finance Subcommittee meetings. If you recall, this was brought up at our last meeting. I previewed it for you all. We agreed there should be a vote. We agreed we would wait for the vote. This is the vote. Finance also considered this last Wednesday and approved it or recommended it to full school committee unanimously. I'm not going to talk about it all again, but let me know if you need me to remind you of any of the salient details. Okay, the only other thing I would highlight is that having gone through this process once, we learned a little bit about how we want to make sure it works, and I'm going to make sure that the stuff comes directly from Susan to me if we have any of these that come off cycle. So that is the
Move it.
vote. Oh, thank you for the moving.
Okay, so for those not on the finance subcommittee, and the change you'll see is that
Can I summarize?
yeah. Maybe
There's two
Does anyone want to
I would,
second it
yeah.
first? So
I'll
the
second it.
discussion. Okay.
There's two changes that are going on. One is that we are shifting grants from not just from post-acceptance review, or not just from post-award review to pre-submission review, so that they are aligned and any school committee questions or concerns are resolved pre-submission. But because of that, it means that there can be timeliness issues if a grant is due, let's say, in 3 weeks, but the next finance committee, subcommittee meeting isn't for 4 weeks. So all we're doing is granting the finance subcommittee chair that approval if something has a timeliness aspect before it can be, before it could go before the full finance subcommittee to approve those.
And just to be aware, even if you approve it and you send it in, you don't have to take the grant. I mean, there is that possibility.
That's
I don't
right.
think
And-
that would happen very often, but
And the plan is to still, to report out on any of these that happen off cycle, so. Are we ready to
All
vote?
right, so the motion has been made and seconded, so I think we are ready to vote. Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Okay, I'm going to skip 3 for a minute and just jump to 4, and then we'll come back to 3 if that's okay. So number 4, Finance Subcommittee reviewed on Wednesday, and so part of this is about, as Susan mentioned earlier, last year we did not have a director of operations. The year before that, we had updated our building rental fees. And so due to the transition of all of this and the changes, it seems clear that there's been some miscommunications with certain parties. And so we are having the staff, this is a vote to authorize staff to review and align prior year, meaning FY24 and current year FY25 building rental fees and charges, so that if there was any sort of miscommunication or miscalculation in fees that might have arisen from this transition and this change in fees, then staff can go back and just work directly with the parties to negotiate any modifications that need to be made. So Finance, again, approved this unanimously. So I'm going to move it.
I'll second it.
I have one question, or, well, Stephen, you go first.
Yeah, I have a question. So would this mean that so this is for instance, you, Dr. Givens, or Joe Albuquerque to negotiate directly? And would this mean that it does not need to come back to school committee for an amended vote?
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah, I had basically the same question. Would we even be notified when something like this happens? Or, no.
In the same, I mean, these are all sort of operational things.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no. Can we vote? Can we vote?
I see no hands up, so yes. Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mariah,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well.
Okay, then the third one, finance all set, we're gonna crank through this.
We're ahead of schedule, Mariah.
And I will get you home and for my part, we will leave early. So the next one is, going back to number 3, is possible vote to authorize the administration to amend the Eastern Bus Company contract to add the routes needed to transport students to the Fisher Hill campus during the Pierce School construction project. So we also discussed this at finance and approved it. And I just want to highlight a couple points and then admit that I am still confused after the vote a little bit. So, but with that said, if other people have questions, we can get to that. So the important thing is that the reason this is coming to school committee instead of the Pierce School Building Committee is that the Eastern Bus Company contract is actually with the schools, not with the building project. And so although the funds for this are coming out of the building project, the contract itself is with the schools. And the other thing I want to highlight is that, well, I don't understand the math. Susan is sure that the math is right, which is great. And so with that math, the total cost of the total additional cost is actually less than what was originally projected in the budget for the $1.5 million in relocation expenses that this is being funded under. So the good news is it's projected to come in less than it was originally estimated at. And so finance also unanimously recommended this to full school committee. And I'll leave it at that in case there's math questions or other questions or other comments.
Maybe can help if there's some confusion, because I see some confused people. We, in the school building project, have a code that charges everything to the school building project. But for instance, we're doing something together with the DPW that helps them, but they want it under the contractor to do it. And so therefore, DPW, we estimate the cost or know the cost, and DPW pays that amount. So that amount is charged to DPW instead of to the school building project. So this one would be the opposite, where, you know, we know what the cost will be, and the school building project would pay, I think, directly
yes.
to the bus company those costs.
But you're not, but the administration isn't seeking permission to, what's the permission that's being sought?
So we have to still approve the contract. The school committee has to approve the contract because
to modify it.
The number of routes is basically what needs to be amended. And if you look at the document that Susan provided, the first paragraph is essentially the contractual language, which, and so it talks to you about the number of buses and what's going to be added and where they're going to be added and blah, blah, blah. So that's what's going on. So it's a lot of details, but essentially, we don't get involved in the contract negotiation. We're just authorizing staff to approve, to be able to amend the contracts.
But what we have been able to do over the last few years, Susan did it last year, is really renegotiate our bus contracts, which up until recently, there was like one game in town, one company, and then we've been able to, I think there's a few more now that we can now really have a competitive bid. But I do have one question.
Wait, so it's a change in scope at net savings. That's what's being sought.
Thank you, Stephen.
That's very well said.
Great.
Yeah.
I'm all for it.
Yeah. Can I ask my question? So I'm a little confused. There's two buses with 3 runs, but then there's an extra bus, and that one is if we need it?
Yes. Well, there's 2 things. First of all, the amendment to the
I think you have to talk into this
sorry.
because nobody can hear.
Yeah.
I
So,
can't either.
you know, I realized last night, as I was texting with some members, that I've confused people by trying to be efficient, and my efficiency made it more confusing. So there's two items. What's really before you is the amendment to the contract. I was also then trying to provide information that would be helpful for the building committee so that they would know how to amend their budget. And I merged the two into this and I confused everybody. So what I need from you is to be able to amend the contract so that the bus company and the school department, I have an agreement about how to pay for the Pierce runs. So that's that's what I need from you. The other part was the cost is less than what was in the budget, so I put that there. And then in the process of trying to explain it all, I've just confused everybody. So apologies for that. So does that, try me again if I didn't?
So. I
Okay.
think so. And the one other thing is, if we don't use a bus, or if something, we can change this too. This is what we would pay, isn't that correct? Like if a bus doesn't run one day or something like that?
Yes, we don't, I mean, that's their business. They've got to transport the kids. So if some bus goes down or something, they've got to figure out how to backfill the runs. But in essence, this will put us on record and commit to the Eastern Bus Company for the next 3.5 years to provide our students with transportation to, which was not in the original budget, which is why we're in the original contract, which is why we have to amend it.
All right, I don't think.
So I'm going to
anyone's
make a
made the
motion
Yeah.
to do this thing that's written there.
I'll
I'm
second.
still going to make the
Carolyn.
motion, second it, and then we
Yeah,
can keep.
who seconded?
I'll second it.
Okay, Stephen, Carolyn, go ahead.
Thanks, Susan.
Yeah.
So I'm still slightly confused about the sort of how there is a bus dedicated to doing these runs at 7:10 and 7:45 that isn't dedicated, that isn't contracted just for Pierce, but I'll put that aside. And so I'm assuming that bus somehow it's doing double duty. So that's a bus that's, okay.
Which is why the
So,
rent's less.
but I do have a question where the memo says, and we know, there are 3 runs,
3 routes.
one at 7:10, 2 at 7:45. At least that's the morning. And that's what's asked for. But then on the second page, it's 355 times 2. 355 times 3 is not 127,800.
Right. So the difference is the way the contract's structured for pricing is that each bus, you paid by the bus, not by the route.
Yep.
Okay? And the way the contract is written, that each bus can do 2 runs. So if you have 3 runs, 3 new routes, then that is the equivalent under the contract pricing structure to be the equivalent of 2 buses. It takes 2 buses under the contract to provide 3 routes. Okay?
Okay.
One bus is 2 routes and the next one is 1 route. That's just the way the pricing structure is laid out in the contract. So there's 2 parts going on. One, they have to bill us by the bus, not by the route. And so according to the metrics, it would be 2 buses, not 3. Even if they use 3 buses to do it,
Yep.
the pricing structure is still for every 2 routes, it's 1 bus. It's just the way it's written. I understand that that's a little confusing. The other part is that the daily rate, instead of being $5.55, is $3.55, or
Yep.
instead of $5.50, it's $3.55. And that's to account for the fact that we're not actually adding buses, we're adding routes. That's why the pricing is less,
Yep.
as well as not 3 routes too, because we don't pay based on route, we pay based on bus. I know that probably isn't helping you understand at all.
This is the
I
hard
don't know
math
how-
problem that we were all.
I know.
We know multiplication, and we don't understand why it's not 3 times 355 times 180, or 2 times 550
understand.
times. Exactly. It's like, okay,
I
but-
understand. It took a lot, it took weeks to be able to get us all on the same page. At least the contract.
That makes me feel better about our own ability to get on the same
Yeah,
page.
yeah.
I think the important thing to recognize is we got economy of scale.
You did.
You know, and Dr. Givens did a great job of negotiating this, so thank you.
Yes.
Yep, so before moving to the vote, I would also like to thank Dr. Givens for negotiating a change in scope at net savings, as Stephen said. Sounds good. All right, so Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
Could I be recognized to say something?
Oh, yes.
I don't know, who was the person who used to say to our student representative, at this point, there might not be a lot that's super interesting for you, and you should go home and do your homework, because it's senior crunch time and college, like, early decision time. So can I say that this time?
Yes.
I hope you understand that, Kieran.
Oh, I mean, at this point, actually, like, the college application process. Oh, okay. At this point, actually, like the college application process, like our deadline is November 1st, at least for early. I've submitted my stuff, so, you know, I'm just kind of here for the ride, you know.
Well, then,
like,
congratulations.
You know, being here is like my kind of way of celebrating the fact that I got it done. So,
Now let's get in.
Right. Yeah. Okay, so we are actually ahead of schedule now as we come to our school committee actions. That may not last long. So the first school committee action is, I hope this really doesn't take over the meeting. It's a discussion and possible vote on that long list of proposed resolutions at the MASC annual meeting. And so the purpose of this discussion is to instruct our delegate to the meeting, Suzanne, and the alternate is Sarah, on how to vote when these come to the floor. Okay. So all of you have a copy of the resolutions, the proposed resolutions, and Betsy has also circulated the minutes of the Government Relations Subcommittee meeting from October 17th, where the subcommittee went through all the resolutions one by one in the hope that the full school committee would then not have to do that. So to structure this conversation, I thought what I might do is, so there are 4 categories now of motions, or of resolutions after that subcommittee meeting. They're the resolutions where the subcommittee recommended to the full school committee that we vote to support. They're the resolutions where the subcommittee recommended to the full school committee that we vote to oppose. They're the ones where the subcommittee recommended to the full school committee that we abstain. And then finally, there are 5 where the subcommittee couldn't really come to a conclusion and thought that the committee should discuss. So Suzanne, I could certainly use your help in presenting the outcome of the subcommittee meeting, but let me go through quickly just what are the resolutions that we recommended supporting. And then if anybody wants to reopen any of those, they might speak up now.
Can I make a motion first, Andy?
Well,
Can I make a motion first?
if you have a specific motion in mind, go ahead. I thought that it might be clear after we've discussed them, and then we'll know exactly what we're voting on.
Well, what I'd like to move to the floor is acceptance of the support, not support, and abstain recommendations of the Government Relations Committee.
Okay, that will take care of part of it. We would still then have the 5 resolutions left over that we need to discuss.
Correct.
Sorry,
I'd
can
still
I-
like to move that.
Do we have a second for Val's motion?
Yeah, they're not, the minutes weren't distributed, so we're not.
Yeah, I was going to ask if it's is there any way that, I happen to have my laptop, so I'm opening those minutes. Is there any way that that can go up on the screen without too much trouble?
The minutes themselves?
The minutes which have your,
Or could even the subcommittee chair, which I guess is you.
That's me.
Just summarize?
I could. That's what I was about to do. Val then proposed her motion. I'm happy to second that, just in order to have a motion on the floor, and then I can specify exactly what the motion is by reading out the recommendations. So, all right, so that's the motion, and I've seconded. Okay, so the resolutions that we recommended to support are numbers 3, 4, and 7. So 3 is on safe storage of firearms, would call on the legislature to make it legal to have video cameras on school buses to catch people who are not obeying the stop sign on school buses. And then 7 is on fully adjusting Chapter 70 aid for inflation. Okay, so those are the live resolutions. Those are the ones that the subcommittee would like the full school committee to vote to support. In addition, there are these expiring resolutions that may come to the floor again, and of those, we wanted to support the one on polystyrene, Part B of the educator diversity and professional licenses one. Yeah. So that's about licensure, the part that's not about the MTEL exam. So, okay.
So you said you wanted to support polystyrene.
Mm-hmm.
What was the other one?
Part B of the educator diversity and professional licenses expiring resolution. So that would that calls on the state to change the law so that educator licensure is done by a body of where educators are at least represented, which is currently not the case.
30, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unfortunately, these aren't numbered. The
Well, there were,
the expiring ones.
The document itself has a number.
Yeah. Yes. So that one is on page 30, and there's a Part A and a Part B. So we would like to support Part B and oppose Part A. Okay.
Vested, oh.
I'm going to go through the rest. We're only at the beginning of the list. Okay. We also wanted to support the funding of transportation costs for students in foster care. Also, the expiring resolution on access to menstrual supplies, and the one on charter school reform, if these are brought back to the floor. Okay, so that's category 1, the resolutions that the subcommittee would like the school committee to support. Category 2, the ones that we would like the school committee to oppose, there's only one such, and that's Part A of the educator diversity and professional licensure one. That has to do with the MTEL exam that educators have to take. Speaking for myself, having taken that exam, I think it's quite appropriate that educators should be able to pass that, and I don't think that it should be abolished. That's. Well, that was also I think that's what I said at the committee, and the committee seemed to agree with that. So yeah. Okay, so that's category 1, category 2. Category 3 are the ones that we would like the committee to abstain on. These are resolutions 6, which is yes. So these are basically the ones where you didn't feel like we knew enough because they're kind of specific to rural school districts or regional school districts. So number 6, 8, which is on funding for regional school districts. 9.
Wait, I'm sorry. 8 is on equitable funding for non-regional school districts, which is us, right?
No, we don't have the high transportation costs.
We don't?
No.
Compared to them?
No. So this is sponsored by the Plymouth School Committee. I think it's about towns that are geographically maybe very large and have high transportation costs, but they're not regional districts, and so they don't get the special provisions that.
So the special education transportation costs aren't considered in this. It's literally like in municipality transportation.
This is, to my understanding, is just in town or in city transportation.
Okay, thank you.
Not,
It's
especially
regular
under
ed.
a separate.
It's
Go ahead.
regular ed transportation. Yeah.
The 2 other resolutions that we wanted to abstain on were 9 on MSBA grants evaluation for Chapter 74, and 10, again, something about VOCTEX. And we would also like to abstain on expiring resolutions on child poverty and climate change if those get brought to the floor.
We did not agree on which one, poverty and children?
Child poverty, yeah. You saying we did not agree on that one?
That's what it says. So did not agree.
What was the vote? 2-1 what?
So I believe we bring that to the whole committee.
Oh, okay. Well, so I guess I misclassified that. I thought we had agreed to recommend abstention, but you're saying we Some of us wanted to support and some wanted to oppose.
Right.
Okay, so no for child poverty,
What was the other one, other than child poverty, you said?
climate change.
My goodness, which is where? Oh, now I found it, 32. And you said you were doing what with that, abstaining?
We wanted to abstain, yeah. Okay, so that brings us to the end of Val's motion, right? So we have not yet covered, I guess there are now 6 things that we need to break out and discuss separately. So would
The
anyone
ones
like
that
to
you
comment
didn't, the
on
ones
I've
like, for
mentioned?
example, resolution 1 that you did not mention yet means those are ones we would discuss.
Yeah, so the remaining ones are numbers 1, 2, and 5 among the numbered ones. And then the last 2 expiring resolutions in the document, which are prohibiting the use of Native American mascots and full funding for IDEA. Okay, so.
Sorry, can I have a moment to process?
Yeah.
It's a lot. Hold
So we'll give it a couple minutes. Anyone who wants to ask questions about the resolutions so far, and then we can maybe vote on this before going on to the remaining ones.
So the ones that you didn't mention, like mandatory recess, school anti-racism, those are, where do those sit? Not in the motion at all?
They're not in the motion, yeah.
Meaning we'll discuss them still?
Yes.
Okay.
We'll discuss them after voting on the motion.
This is like to the consent agenda of government relations we're doing right now.
Right, although I don't yet sense consent, so we'll see.
Well, it's your proposed
Yeah.
sort of consent agenda, okay. Can I ask, can one split A and B the way you did? I mean, I guess we
Yeah.
can, but like, what does that mean?
Well, the convention did last time, I think. I mean, both of them, both versions passed, but by different margins.
I
So,
see,
so clearly individual committees can split their
Thank
ticket.
you.
So, you know, just a reminder, these resolutions come to the MASC convention, and they really are, they are brought either by MASC, executive board, or perhaps by a school committee. And so it really gives the MASC a direction for the priorities on how they do advocacy, how they push for whatever the resolution is saying. And sometimes there are many long conversations at the convention, at this part of it, at the business meeting, and sometimes it's very short. So just,
I would like to make a request to remove climate change from the consent agenda, because you requested to abstain from it, and I don't know why we would abstain from it. Or maybe you can explain why you thought you should abstain so that I would understand that.
Yeah. Do you remember how the discussion went, Helen or Suzanne?
I have to look at it again.
If I remember correctly, and my memory might not be that good, it was just so broad that it didn't make sense. You know, it's like motherhood and apple pie. I think that's what we said, you know, and so what are you really voting for, and what are you trying to push? You know, for instance, the Mass School Building Authority gives extra points to every district who does more sustainability stuff within their school buildings. You know, that's there right away for districts to be able to, I don't know, it just felt like it was too vague. And, you know, I mean, if you're doing a resolution, how much bandwidth does the person have anyways? MASC, I think we have one lobbyist. How much bandwidth do they have to really do stuff? So yes, it's nice to vote for climate, you know, to do something about climate change, but just didn't feel like it really made a difference with what they were proposing.
I do think, though, that the second resolution, resolve clause, talks about specifically like funding for infrastructure needs and extreme weather events. So I do.
That's FEMA.
Not necessarily. I mean, I think that, like, you know, there can be additional building programs, and it talks about state and federal, but the federal, like, for example, the green school bus program this past year, this would be advocating for more of those kinds of programs. I think that was a DOE program, if I recall. So I guess my point is, I think that, to me, this is specific in that it's asking for those kinds of funds. We know that the federal government is exploring those kinds of funds, and to the extent that the
State Association of School Committees can further lend its shoulder to that cause, I feel like I would like to see us not abstain, but say yes.
Do you want to move to amend the motion to take this one out of the motion and discuss it separately?
I would prefer to move it into the yes bucket of the consent agenda.
Is there a second to that?
I second that.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's vote on it, unless there's further discussion of this amendment.
Maybe I'm not reading this correctly, but what they're asking for is to advocate for infrastructure needs state and federal emergency funding for disaster relief.
Yeah, it's both.
Well, there's
It's both
two.
disaster relief
And the
and
paragraph
infrastructure
beforehand,
fund.
too.
But the paragraph beforehand is just, advocacy, right, of action on climate change. But this one is not just talking about emergency funding, but infrastructural funding too.
Okay.
Are we still voting?
So, yes, so we're now voting on Mariah's amendment to change our position on this from abstain to support. Okay, Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah is out of the room. Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote no. All right, so that's been amended.
Yeah.
All right, any other proposed amendments or discussion of the main motion?
Can I just hear the subcommittee's thinking on the poverty and children submission?
Wait, I thought that was coming to us as a committee.
That comes to the whole committee.
No, they
No.
disagreed and they said it's coming.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, sorry, so I had misclassified it and then we took it out of the motion.
Yes, it moved to a yes in the consent agenda.
All right, I am just checking to see whether Val has a hand up because it's hard for me to
No,
check.
I'm
Okay.
just ready to vote on the amended consent agenda.
Okay, it looks like we all are, so let's start with Jesse.
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. All right, that brings us to the remaining 6 resolutions. Let's start with number 1, development of an alternative to high-stakes MCAS testing. So the minutes say that the subcommittee does not have a specific recommendation, but suggests that the full school committee review and discuss this resolution. So this is not to be confused with our upcoming discussion of whether to support abolishing the MCAS as a graduation requirement for individual students.
And those things, they're not related, right?
Well, they're related, but they're not identical.
Right, and well, you can do one or both or neither. They're
Absolutely.
independent, I guess, is the way I would describe it.
Yes.
Okay.
I have a question on this.
Yes.
I have my hand up too.
Okay, that's a Val and then Carolyn.
So this is essentially, I just want to make sure I understand this. Assuming that no on to 1, this would be like our, like a backup? Is this, I guess my question is this what we've been voting on historically on MCAS for MASC, or is this different from what we've historically been voting on?
Suzanne, do you want to take a stab at this?
So Val, here's my confusion. It's looking for, it says at the top, development of an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS test. And then its third, therefore, be it resolved, is that the MASC urges Massachusetts to enact a moratorium on MCAS testing effective immediately.
Right, and I
Well,
thought that
for their
historically
force.
we'd been voting on a moratorium, or at least it had been titled a moratorium in past years, but is this? the
We
same
have
resolution?
voted, and MASC has, that they have that resolution that passed in prior years.
Okay, so is this
So this is really about an alternative to the
year's
high
version
stakes.
of that, or I'm just.
But
very
I don't
confused
know
about-
what this other third one means, this third, therefore.
Although I think what you see immediately is the moratorium and not the development of an alternative.
But the title is alternative.
We get the repeal before the replace on this one. Yeah, so I'm trying to get a sense of the committee at large. Do we want to take a position on this one?
Well, I was gonna, this isn't an answer to your question, except I was gonna raise exactly what Suzanne just said, that when it's, it's more than just the develop alternative. I don't have the historical knowledge. I don't know.
Historically, it's been called moratorium, but I guess my question, and maybe none of us remember, is was it just a one whereas clause in moratorium, or did it always have these whereas clauses, but with a different sort of lead?
You mean therefore, Val?
Yeah, sorry. So like, was it called moratorium, but it had alternative as say the third clause, whereas this one says alternative but has moratorium down lower. I'm just wondering if the text is the same and it's just the heading that's different, or if it's actually a different resolution.
I'm looking at 2023.
And I guess being new, it would help me just to understand a tiny bit more. So were we to vote yes on any of these, that means that we are authorizing Suzanne to go and say, the Brookline School Committee agrees with these resolutions that are put as a sort of internal resolutions of, can we call it mask, or do we not say that?
Sure.
It just seems easier. And the effect of, or the resolutions, they're resolutions, the mask does not create, they advise on policy, of course, as we know, but they're just ideas.
Nothing
So the
becomes law as a
effect is-
direct result.
Okay,
of
great.
Something that MASC
Okay.
does at its convention.
Okay, so I'm looking at last year's from the minutes. It's in our booklet. It came up, they had this last year's resolution 7. It's the same.
But it's different. Oh, no, it's.
No,
It
it's
just
the
has a different
same.
heading. I think that's the point. It's a different heading, but it has the same.
It's the same, therefore, it doesn't say therefore, it says be it resolved. And that motion was tabled last year.
Oh, really?
And what did we do?
I don't remember.
Okay.
I don't have those notes.
We supported it
We
unanimously.
supported it, yeah.
As a
I would
moratorium.
support it again this year, but.
Including the part about develop an alternative.
Mhm.
I guess that gives me pause, is the develop an alternative. I would really like to see that localized and be, I don't want to do another MCAS. So therefore, be it resolved, further resolved that MASC urges Massachusetts to develop an alternative to the high-stakes MCAS tests. If that word alternative means a different test, I'm not sure that I.
It doesn't necessarily. It could mean the alternative is that they turn it back to the local districts and they define what it means to be a graduate. So it doesn't mean that it's a state required alternative.
So would anyone like to make a motion on how the school committee should instruct our delegate on this one, either to vote yes or to abstain or to vote no?
I move to instruct our delegate to vote yes.
I second that.
All right, no more discussion. We can move to a vote. Jesse?
Abstain.
Sarah?
Sorry, we're voting on resolution 1 right now.
Yes, on Mariah's motion to instruct Suzanne to vote yes on resolution 1.
No.
No.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Abstain.
Yeah, Carolyn?
I'll vote yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I'll vote no. All right.
Wait, well,
So what do we
vote
have?
count, please.
Yeah, okay.
One.
Was that-
I have 4 yeses, 3 noes, and 2 abstentions.
All right, the motion passes.
Ooh. It passes with
Yeah.
that, yeah, 4-3.
All right, resolution 2 was to increase the compulsory attendance age from 16 to 18. Here, it was mainly that we were a little hesitant because we weren't sure whether there were unintended consequences and things we hadn't thought of. On the face of it, it seems like a good idea to require people to stay in school until they're 18. But we didn't have enough confidence in our own knowledge of the whole picture here. Is that a good summary of our,
That's a good summary.
of our
Linus,
discussion?
is it possible for you to comment on the difference between going to school at 16 to 18?
So unless other members have interesting things
Can
to
I ask
say,
a question of Linus?
Yeah, sure. Go
Linus,
ahead.
is it possible for someone at 16 to either move into what would be considered an internship or vocational training or some sort of day activity where they wouldn't be considered a full-time student but could finish their I'm just trying to think of, is there a way that someone could be 16 years old and be on a path to a high school diploma at some point? Meaning at some point in a
I would just
in a
point out, Val,
consecutive
that the
way.
first whereas clause includes an equivalency component. Yeah, it says equivalent accredited education program. I don't know if that's exactly what you're thinking of, but it sounds like it is based on your description of vocational programming.
Okay.
So I would move to instruct our delegate to abstain on this one. Is there a
Second
second? Yeah, for Carolyn? Okay. Any further discussion before we vote? Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
No.
Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain on the abstain.
Helen?
No.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
No.
And I vote yes. I think the ayes have it on that one. Yes.
5 yeses.
5 to 3 to 1. Okay.
Yep.
Sorry, can I ask a
The most
process
disagreement
question?
we've ever had.
Yep.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Carolyn and then Helen?
Okay. So if a vote to instruct Suzanne to abstain fails, then what is her instruction?
Then we could switch to yes or no.
Yeah.
We have to then vote yes or no. Okay.
So,
Well, so
Sit there and look pretty. at the meeting.
I do.
She has to do something.
but I have other things to do as well. So did we vote just on this one?
My motion was to instruct you to abstain.
So it's a yes to abstain.
Yes to abstain.
Thank you.
And Helen?
so one of the things that happens at MASC is people put amendments onto
Yes,
these.
they do.
So for instance, if there were an amendment here that were to say, that pending some sort of agreement with the school in terms of getting their GED and being able to go into a program that they could get into at 16, I could be okay with that. But, so it depends, oftentimes the person who's there needs to use their judgment too.
So we
I
should
get the
fire
sense of what-
Suzanne if she changes her.
Well, we'll never know. Sorry. You can't imagine, you're sitting there among, 361 people and trying to count a vote.
And also sometimes during the discussion, as we mentioned earlier, sometimes the discussion goes on, and we still don't seem to be where we want to be, and they'll send it off to a task force to study.
Right,
it,
right.
or, something like
Right.
that, so.
All right, Resolution 5 was about aligning taxing authority with the required local contribution. I think the issue here is that the required local contribution is often based on property taxes, which is, so that part of the tax base falls under Prop 2.5, but the required local contribution has been rising at a faster rate than that. And so this is trying to address that. I think the subcommittee felt like this was, this required expert knowledge to understand that maybe we didn't have, and I have not so far been able to sort of get more clarity on this. So since I haven't, I would suggest abstaining on this. So I'll move to abstain, or to instruct our delegate to abstain.
Can I make a comment, which is that,
Can I see first whether anyone
Yeah.
has can second that? Otherwise, okay, Carolyn. So go ahead, Mariah.
I would vote against the motion to abstain. I think that we should be very supportive of this. And I think that there is a huge interest, or a huge knowledge base about the limits that Prop 2.5 places on us. I think that we see the impacts in our town and our schools. And I think that being able to have this kind of matching would make a big difference. And I won't call it matching, but yeah, mirroring, that would make a big difference in how we can be effective in our ability to keep pace with the needs of both the town and schools. So I would be supportive.
I mean, in our case, just thinking very parochially, are our increases driven at all by changes in the required local contribution? Or is it more just, we have a budget that, we put together a budget that meets what we think are our needs, and that's what's rising, not because the state is requiring us to contribute something?
I'm not sure if I follow your question exactly, but what I would say is that we had a long, protracted discussion last spring, and the spring before, and the spring before, and the spring before, and probably every spring about the challenges that we have in fitting within our allocated budget. So if these are the decisions we're having to make, and I think that funding flexibility would really change how we think about where we want to go. Ellen has her hand up.
I'm not sure this gives us flexibility, because I think we're above the contribution. Susan, maybe you know more about this.
That's sort of what I was asking, yeah.
Yeah, my sense is that we are way above what the local contribution.
But I don't think that's
There are communities that will only give exactly what they have to do.
But I don't think that's what this is saying. It's
Yeah.
saying that the 2.5% cap is matched to this state level, that the 2.5% cap would be increased to this state level. So if they're saying you have to increase by 5.3% is what they have in the I don't know, 8th whereas clause, the whatever it is, that the statewide, the 2.5% would be increased to the 5.33%. That's how this says. That's how I understand it. Calls for enactment of legislation. that would
Of what
increase-
they require us to do.
No, it would increase the town's levy limit.
Yeah, the levy limit is what's in the therefore clause.
Therefore.
Okay.
I mean, I don't think this is the way this is going to happen, but I do think that Prop 2.5 is a limiting factor, and the more that we can shine light on this policy being damaging to the sort of structure of municipalities, I think it's okay. So anyway, that's why I want us to actually vote yes instead of abstain.
Okay, well, you've convinced me. I can't withdraw my motion, but anyone who wants to, because that's not how it works, but anyone who wants to amend it can do that.
Can I ask a question? Sorry, can somebody just summarize, bumper sticker this? Because I apologize, but I didn't pre-read this, and it's not my wheelhouse. Just in ideological terms, this is saying, we support, in theory, being able to override Prop 2.5 without an override locally as a ballot question.
That's the way I read it.
I wouldn't call it override without override. I would call it mirroring to this other benchmark.
And what is the benchmark?
It's this local contribution percentage increase.
Yeah, Helen.
Can I ask Susan, and Susan, if you don't have the answer, don't be, I don't mean to do this, but how much over our local contribution do we do? Do you know?
I don't know that off the top of my head.
Thank you.
But a lot.
But a lot, okay. That's the point I'm trying to make.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was asking
I think
earlier
what's
as well.
helpful to do is to read the paragraph that starts with therefore. And I think that is where you get the levy limit.
Yeah. I'm amending Andy's abstain to yes in his motion. To direct direct Suzanne to vote yes.
I'll second that.
Okay, Sarah spoke first. Any further discussion before we vote?
He told me he couldn't withdraw, but he could amend. So.
Yeah, just to be clear, the reason I don't think we can withdraw is that once a motion is made and seconded, it doesn't belong to the person who made it. It belongs to the committee, right? So I can't just unilaterally withdraw.
That's why I was interrupting you before it was seconded.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, Jesse, how do you vote?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
I'm going to abstain.
Carolyn,
I have to abstain because I'm sorry, I don't fully follow.
Val,
Abstain.
and I'll vote yes. So, all right. On the amended, I guess sorry, yeah, that was voting on, that was voting on amending, so now we have to vote on the main motion
yeah.
as amended. Yep, okay, Jesse. And thanks, Linus. Yeah,
Glad someone did.
Thanks for keeping us honest.
yes.
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen.
Yes.
Mariah.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Helen.
Yes.
Carolyn.
This is my real abstain.
All right, Val. Val?
Sorry,
Okay,
I
so-
logged off. What was the question?
Oh, so we're now voting on the main motion as amended.
Oh, yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, that takes us to resolution 5. Oh, no, that was resolution 5. Thank goodness. So there were 2 others at the end, and actually 3 since we added poverty. Okay, so I think with the poverty one, we sort of had the same issue with that we did with climate change, which was that it seemed very broad and said lots of nice things, but, at least part of the subcommittee felt that MASC should maybe stick more closely to
Can I make a comment, Andy?
its narrow remit, yeah.
Brookline School Committee has been a supporter of the food schools advocacy for the past 2 years, which this would fall in if you look at the bullet, advocacy for nutrition programs that eradicate hunger among children. And we've also listed as our own programming, support pre-kindergarten programs for all children. That's within our guidelines. I think that we've also, multiple of the bullets here actually are within our own budget guidelines and our own priorities. So to me, it might be broad, but these are because these are big, broad issues, and we should be supportive.
I actually agree, Mariah, and much of this is what was trying to be done with community schools, and I would fully support that.
And I would just highlight too, it's a support for a revenue stream that supports these priorities. So that's really important as well. So I move we vote yes, or we direct Suzanne to vote yes.
We have a second, okay.
A second.
All right, I see no hands up, so let's vote. Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I will abstain on that one. All right, so we have climate change, right? We haven't dealt with that one yet?
No, that was.
Or did we
I
we
thought
moved
that
it
was
out of the original motion, but that means we have to.
moved
No,
it
we
back
moved
up.
it into yes.
We moved it into
Abstained to
yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Consent agenda.
All right, so that leaves just 2. There's the Native American mascots one.
Wait, what about mandatory recess?
Or have I taken them out of order?
I don't know, but
Yeah, mandatory recess.
you said 2, but there was anti-racism, Native American there's 4 more.
Oh, there are 4 more?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So first mandatory recess. On page 32.
Right.
So the expiring resolutions, the MASC says when they're good for 3 or 4 years, and if they feel that they should still be active resolutions, they bring it back under expiring resolutions. So these have passed. In your booklet, it tells you what year it was passed, but they've now coming up for expiration, and they're asking us to pass them. They're looking to see if we're going to pass them again to keep them active.
I move to direct Suzanne to vote yes.
I second that.
Which one are we on, man?
Mandatory recess.
Mandatory recess.
Is there an argument against that, or for an abstention, or for a no?
I think we were very confused by the language in the therefore paragraph. What does it mean to call for at least 20 minutes of free play recess, which cannot be excluded from structured learning time requirements and may not increase the total number of hours required in the school year? That was the part that we didn't understand.
The point
Well, it
being,
looks
it's
like it
supposed
tied
to
it
be
into
timing requirement.
their first whereas clause, right? When I read this. That if you take recess out of time learning calculations,
Yeah.
it affects total instructional time. So some districts got fancy and reduced recess time so that they got on paper more instructional time, or just reduced instructional time. So That's what the therefore ties into when I read this.
And I interpret it a little bit similarly, but a little bit differently in that they're trying to remove the incentive to gain back instructional time by sacrificing recess. If you explicitly say that it is instructional time because it can't be excluded from structured learning time, then there's no incentive to trade recess for something else. And so that's what they're trying to.
Didn't we discuss that here? Don't we have a policy similar to this?
I think we do.
We have in our wellness policy.
In our wellness policy.
The difference is we can't count the 20 minutes towards our 900 hours.
Right, they don't want you to do that.
I move that we direct Suzanne to vote yes. I think I already did that once, but I'm doing it again.
Yeah, seconded.
Can I ask a question? I thought that there was an issue. I thought we voted no on this last year because there was an issue with the school contract that we wouldn't get our time on learning. Linus, am I misremembering that?
Well, but the thing is, it says here, this is included in time on learning, the 20 minutes.
Oh, Mike, sorry.
Sorry, Val, I don't remember what we did on this one last year.
But also, I think if there's legislation, it changes what happens, if that's the case.
Right, it changes our time on learning hours, yeah.
Andy,
Can I move a third?
as well, the last sentence seems to have something missing. I mean, is maybe just in how it got copied or something? It has some bar.
I think it's supposed to be an in.
Yeah.
It somehow got typoed
That I
to
assume
a
is an
capital
in.
I.
Part in the school year, is
Yeah.
that it?
All right, so are we ready to vote on this one? I think so. Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Helen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well.
We don't have many left.
Okay, so I think we still have school committee anti-racism,
Yeah.
prohibiting use of Native American mascots, and full funding for IDEA.
I thought we said vote, we voted yes to support that.
Did we? Okay, yeah, I don't think
I
that one
have
was
that down.
controversial.
Yeah, that
Okay,
down.
yeah.
Wait, what did you just
No,
say?
that wasn't included in the.
None of those were included in your consent.
Yeah, I think I may have messed up in getting to the very end of this document.
We got
Let's just keep
Yeah.
going. Let's just accept the consent agenda for what it was, right? Okay.
Okay.
We're almost done. 1, 2, 3. I have 3 more.
Yeah, so school committee anti-racism, I think that I seem to remember a discussion of this way back when. And we had some issues with the language, therefore be it resolved that all the school districts in the Commonwealth should guarantee that racist practices are eradicated. That just
Yeah.
seems, how could we possibly guarantee that? I mean, we would love this, for that to happen, but it's not something that any district can guarantee.
I think
Also,
they tabled it last year.
Yeah, I'd also say that the last line seems to reflect, the last phrase, all lives cannot matter until Black Lives Matter, seems to be maybe representing a period in history or something. Is that in 2020?
It seems to have passed in 2020.
Yeah, so I think the world's different today.
So would anyone like to make a motion on this one?
I move that we abstain.
I'll second. Yeah, Jesse?
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
No.
Mariah?
I'm a reluctant yes, but frustrated by the wording.
Yeah, Suzanne?
Yeah, I'm going to abstain.
Helen?
Abstain.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
I'm gonna abstain, but if Suzanne gets to better language, I'd love for her to vote something else.
I'll vote yes on instructing Suzanne to abstain, but yeah, I wouldn't mind voting yes on a better version of this.
So what are my instructions? To abstain?
To abstain unless it gets better, in which case you can vote yes.
What was the count?
Jesse?
The motion is to instruct
Suzanne to abstain.
To abstain.
Yeah.
Yes.
Sarah?
Yes.
Stephen?
No.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Abstain.
Helen?
Abstain.
Carolyn?
Yes.
Val?
Abstain.
And I vote yes.
Five.
Wow, this is going to require quite a spreadsheet.
Well, I don't actually think it passed, Andy.
Had 5 yeses.
And I had 4, I thought it was 4, 4, and 1 no from Stephen.
Oh, it was Jesse, Sarah, Mariah, reluctant, whatever, and then Chair and Carolyn.
Yeah, 5.
So that's 5.
Okay, so prohibiting the use of Native American mascots. The subcommittee felt unable to take a position on this one. We're fine with probably whatever position the school committee wants to take.
I move that we instruct the representative to vote yes.
To prohibit them?
I second that. I mean, if the NFL and MLB can get this right, I'm not sure why schools can't.
All right, Jesse,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mariah,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Val,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. And
Just a nota bene, Brookline did this
Right.
20
yeah,
years
we've,
ago.
we've,
Yeah.
we've, we've done
maybe even
Really?
more.
What was the team name?
There are a few holdouts in the state at this point.
different than-
Okay, I think we're done, right? Because the IDEA one,
I'm not sure we voted on that
oh,
one.
we didn't vote on that one. Okay.
We
that-
recommended
I
supporting it.
think that was an oversight on my part to not include it in the motion earlier. So I guess we have to vote it separately.
I move yes.
I move yes. Yeah.
Second.
Okay. So Jesse,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mariah,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Helen,
Yes.
Carolyn,
Yes.
Val.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, done with that. Suzanne now knows what to do.
I do.
Okay, this brings us to the next school committee action, which is a discussion and possible vote to support a yes vote on question 2 on the Massachusetts ballot, which would eliminate MCAS as a graduation requirement. So on this one, so thanks to Betsy for reminding me of the last time that the school committee took a position on a ballot question, which was in November 2022, when we voted to support the Fair Share Amendment, right? So the practical effect of our voting to support or oppose a ballot question is simply that it's like we're not going to use district resources to disseminate our endorsement, right? It would just be that the chair would inform, I suppose, the yes campaign if indeed we voted to support yes on 2, and they could then use our endorsement on whatever campaign literature. So we would join the many school committees and city councils that are listed right now as supporters. So that would be, I think, the only practical effect of a vote to support yes on 2. Okay.
I move it.
Yeah. So are there any questions just on what we're doing, what this means, before we go on to the substance? Yeah. Carolyn?
I think I do understand what it means, and I listened to your discussion. I watched the tape of your subcommittee discussion. And you guys were really clear about that the effect is to join a coalition and allow our public body to be named in campaign literature and on a website. I wonder if the motion should include that, sort of for the purpose of, to be clear.
So how would you word that?
It's too.
Yeah, I think it could just be a motion that the school committee supports yes on 2, and then, it's understood, or I'm saying now, that we would not be using district resources to publicize that, but that, the chair would contact the yes campaign just to inform them of the endorsement. They would use it however they saw fit.
Okay.
That's if we acted that way.
Because, well, I would amend it so that it's not for fundraising purposes of any kind.
Vote? You mean the vote is not for?
Right, that whatever you're instructing, I don't think you should instruct. I think we should vote to support or not support and let the campaign contact us about use.
So according to the minutes of what we did for the Fair Share Amendment, it says if the motion passes, Ms. Federspiel, who was Government Relations Chair at the time, will inform Fair Share Massachusetts. So it's not about instructing, but it's about just informing.
Of our vote, you just had
Yeah.
2 other sentences that you were adding, which I don't agree with.
Which sentences?
To include us in this way and not this way, and
No, that's just,
No, no.
sorry, that wouldn't be an instruction to them to do something. It would just be that what I imagine they would do, which is that we would end up being listed on their website along with all those other school committees. But we wouldn't be telling them to do that. They could if they wanted to.
Right. Andy, can I ask a question?
Yeah, Mariah has a question.
Is it clear that the word support here actually means endorse? And if not, can we just replace support with endorse? Because support is a much broader word. It could mean many things, right? But endorse is pretty clear. And you've been using the word endorsement. So I would prefer if it was a friendly amendment that the vote is to endorse a yes vote.
I don't think there's a motion yet, so you're free to.
Well, it says possible
formulate it.
vote to support a yes vote. There's wording on the agenda. Anyway, I guess I would, if, when the motion is made, I would move that it says endorse instead of support.
Jesse?
I guess my question is, are we voting here as voters? Are we voting here as a unified group? Are we voting here as representatives of a school district? What are we really, what will be the optics from the outside looking at the school committee weighing in as a group of individuals and at the same time a group?
Can I speak to that? Sorry.
Yeah, Karen
Unless you-
and Mariah.
I mean, I can offer a thought that's related to when the Yes campaign has a website and they have a list of 20 odd out of the, is it 360 school committees in the state? So 20 odd have taken this position as a group. So it says like, it would say they would list Brookline School Committee. So I can't answer like super technically if the question is more for Andy, but I think the practical effect would be, it would be, so it's not, we're not being asked to say what we think and what we intend to do when we go as individuals to the ballot box, but to say the Brookline School Committee endorses, is joining a coalition of,
Endorses question 2.
I'm saying the practical effect would be joining a coalition. That's like on the website, it says coalition. And when you click on that, it says like whatever school committee.
Well, I don't think we're actually joining a coalition. I think we are voting, it is as a school committee, but we're not joining a coalition. We're just giving our
I'm
vote.
just saying that's how it is on the website. It says coalition.
Okay.
Mariah?
This is sort of an answer to your question, but maybe also not an answer to your question, which is that this is not the first time that the school committee has voted on MCAS, and there's sort of a long history of that. And so to me, the venue might be different, but the sentiment is a recurring sentiment. And I don't think it is a particularly, it's not a change in practice, as you've demonstrated from previous ones. It's not a change in practice on the topic. It's sort of consistent with prior practice. And so that's my sort of thinking about where it all fits with the committee putting itself out there as a body, is there's both the topic and the ballot sort of prior practice.
Can we move it?
Suzanne, yeah, so I guess we don't actually have a motion yet. So does somebody have a well-formulated motion in mind?
Yes,
Ellen?
I put forward a motion to support a yes vote on question 2. To endorse.
Endorse a yes
Sorry.
on question 2?
I gagged.
All right.
Sorry.
I'll second that.
How about November?
I'll take that.
Okay.
All right, does anyone have comments? Now, if anyone has comments on the substance of the MCAS graduation requirement, yeah, Carolyn.
Well, I'm not going to comment on the substance of the MCAS graduation requirement because that's not what we're voting on. We're voting on endorsing the ballot question.
Yeah, so you have more to say about
Yeah,
that
so I
aspect.
want to
All right.
focus, I just want to stay really focused on what we're voting. And some of you probably know, I have a master's degree in education, and I worked for Fair Test, which has a long history of studying and advocating against the use of standardized tests for high-stakes decisions. So this is a topic that is near and dear to my heart, and I think I've given a lot of thought to personally, and I've given a lot of thought to this vote, and I watched your conversation at the subcommittee, and I feel concerned about using our collective platform as an elected body to influence voters, to take a position that's political, and to use our position that way. I actually looked, because I really did want to give this thought, and some of the emails that we received sort of spoke to that. We received a bunch of emails. Most of them were about the MCAS itself. Some of them were about taking this position as a school committee. So I actually looked up, and MASC does have a legal bulletin that is regarding school committees' authority to take positions on ballot questions. This is from their legal counsel. I've been asked by several individuals whether a school committee could legally take a position on a ballot question. It references Anderson v. City of Boston, which is the case law that's sort of the foundation for the campaign finance law guidance and other related guidance. So this bulletin sort of says you can make an argument for it being okay, obviously, as long as you're not using public resources. It concludes by saying school committee members should be familiar with at least the following interpretive bulletins, and it lists 4 bulletins: conflict of interest law, ethics law, and it ends with a bold, most importantly, I strongly recommend that prior to engaging in the above referenced matters, which include many traps for the unwary, you seek the advice of your local counsel. And I don't think we did that. So I feel like we can take positions even publicly as individuals. We could cast our votes on this agenda item and even say what we think as individuals. My feeling is that it would be imprudent for us as a committee to use our influence on this political question.
Do you think that taking a position on this would put us in hotter water than taking a position on the Fair Share Amendment, for example?
Well, I wasn't part of the committee then, so, and I know there's precedent, but that I'm just speaking to the here and now. So I wasn't part of those discussions. And again, I will say, I know there are a handful of school committees that have chosen to do this. The vast majority have chosen not to. If 20 some odd have, then 290 some odd haven't. So, so that's my thinking on this. That's my concern. And again, I think that there's a way for individuals to say what they think. And again, that position is not directly related to my own sort of personal and past professional feeling on this. But so those are my thoughts.
I see Sarah's hand up.
I feel like then maybe we've spent enough time on this because we sort of have said that so many of us believe that it would be great to not have the MCAS be a high stakes test. Carolyn just said that more or less herself. And I do think that we are able to go out there as individuals and state our position. And so now I'm uncomfortable if we take a vote and there's, a couple of school committee members that want to vote no, and their name is implicated with the rest of us. That feels like it's kind of counter to the way that we usually think about things, where we try to discuss and have some consensus between us. And so I guess I'd like to move that we don't take this vote.
Yeah, I don't think we can not vote. We can vote no. Yeah. Mariah?
I mean, we have votes where we don't have consensus all the time. So I don't see that, like, if we don't have a 9-0 vote, that means that, like, part of, and even what we discussed in our norms last week was this idea that sometimes decisions are made and then you move on as a committee to support the committee, right? So sometimes we just we're not on that side, and that's just the way it goes. And that's not about this issue, that's just about everything, right?
I'd also like to suggest that the MASC has come out in favor and made this statement. So our Association of School Committees, their executive board has supported this. So they have come out, if they felt it was inappropriate for school committees to come out one way or the other on it, I think they would not have done that, and they would have said something to us about that. Us meaning all the school committees. So that's the job, is to communicate with us.
And that's why I looked up this legal.
No, I understand what you read, but I'm just on this particular vote. Stephen?
I guess I just want to say that totally respect your point of view on this, Carolyn. I think I have no beef with that argument. I only would say that I don't want to overestimate what I think the influence of the Brookline School Committee is on the voting public, and I think we're involved in education policy matters on a pretty regular basis, which makes me feel the right to weigh in as a body, as a public body, on matters that directly pertain to education policy statewide, to the extent that we're perceived as a body whose opinion is worth considering whatsoever. So because of its relevance, it seems to me that and the lack of a conflict of interest, I think it's reasonable that we can weigh in on it. But totally respect your thinking on this.
All right, I think we can vote. Jesse?
Abstain.
Sarah?
Abstain.
Stephen?
Yes.
Mariah?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Ellen?
Yes.
Carolyn?
No.
Val?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. All right, so I will communicate the result of that vote to yes on 2. All right, this brings us to the last of our school committee actions, which is to review the open meeting law complaint filed by Maria Kogan on October 22nd, 2024 against the school committee. So let me open up the complaint and summarize what I take to be the main point of it, and then describe how I would like the committee to proceed for now, and then we can discuss whether folks are okay with that. So according to the alleged violation is that the docket for the meeting at which Eid got added as a Category 1 holiday said second reading of 25-26 calendar and possible vote, with no mention of a possible new school holiday and no mention of what the holiday was. So that according to the complaint, is insufficient notice of the sort of substance of the discussion that went on. So I think the way OML complaints against public bodies often get handled is simply that for now, we refer it to town council, who has expressed willingness to draft a response. We would then meet an executive session at our next meeting on November 14th to go over that response with town council. And it is okay to use purpose 1 of to meet an executive session to discuss OML complaints against public bodies. So that would be my proposal. I don't know whether we need to take a vote. Does anyone have any other ideas on how we should proceed?
You had said to delegate to the chair.
Yeah, I mean.
You're not saying that now?
Well, for now, right, we would be putting it in the hands of town council, and any member who, wants to speak to town council about this can do so. In the meantime, we should not be speaking about it to each other, though, until we meet an executive session to review whatever draft he comes up with.
Okay.
Yeah, Mariah?
So from what I understand, typically when there is a complaint like this, it is remedied by simply redoing the vote. at a future public session. So would you be possibly coordinating that action with town council for our next meeting or a subsequent meeting?
That could certainly be part of our discussion, yeah.
But like, we could even maybe obviate the executive session if the remedy is simple, since we've delegated to you and town council to figure it out.
Yeah, so maybe we should put it to a vote, just to make it clear, if in fact you want to delegate it to the chair and town council to resolve for now, however they think best, which may involve a draft response to be discussed at the next meeting, or just may involve remedial action if we think that the
Because I
complaint
think
has
it's like,
substance.
I think you can literally revote it and then tell the AGO's office that you have revoted it at a, not at a noticed, in a noticed fashion, and then that sort of concludes it. But again, you'll talk with Joe about it.
Okay.
So whatever that wording is, yes, that's the motion to make.
So just to be, so there are only two options, right? To delegate you to discuss with town council, sorry. So we can delegate you to work with town council, and then, if what I'm understanding is right, there's only two options. Either we respond, or you decide
Well,
with
we
town
have to
council.
respond.
Okay.
The response is
So the
mandatory,
response could be,
but our
we
response could
accept and we're
include,
just gonna.
could include actions that we take to remedy if indeed we think a violation did happen.
Okay.
Which so far I can't speak.
But also, Andy, a violation, like, you don't, you can sort of, you can put aside whether or not a violation occurred and simply revote to close the book on a violation being ongoing. But again,
But that
again,
doesn't
town
relieve us
council
of the
can walk-
responsibility to respond to the.
no, but my point is, then you still have to respond, but you've already sort of addressed, like, either way, you could say, anyway, you don't have to get into the detail. The point is, you can remedy it and then respond, and you can talk about town council.
Yeah. All right. So maybe, does somebody want to make the motion basically by reading out this docket item?
I move that docket item.
Yeah.
Sure, I second it.
Okay. So to refer to town council for an appropriate response and delegate to the chair the authority to coordinate with town council.
So moved.
Okay. All right. Jesse,
Yes.
Sarah,
Yes.
Stephen,
Yes.
Mariah.
Yes.
Suzanne.
Yes.
Helen.
Yes.
Carolyn.
Yes.
Val.
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Okay. That does it for our school committee actions. We move on to subcommittee and liaison reports. Yes. Capital improvements, Helen.
We'll find something to keep us here, right? We met and we've discussed all the things for the CIP, so there's nothing there to report out. Pierce School is moving along well. If any of you have gone by it, you'll see lots coming down, and it's really exciting, and it's moving along well. There also was a crossing that was deemed to be somewhat dangerous for students on School Street, that a temporary one because of the south side of School Street, the school side, being closed by the contractor. Students couldn't cross the street and go up at Harvard Street and would have to go to the, decided to go across, and there was some markings in the middle of the street, but it was found to be very dangerous. So what they've decided to do, to make it simple, is to close the crossing, sort of put black out the crossing, put a barrier on the other side of the sidewalk, and signs that say, go to the corner of Washington and School Street and cross there to get to the bus. So that, I think, was a economical and good suggestion for everybody, because it's not just students, anybody else who would cross to go over to the library or whatever, that's a problem. That's about all for that right now. There will be a school building committee meeting on I think it's the 14th of December. I can't, no, 14th of November. And we'll be discussing budget at that time. And I think I announced at our last meeting about the estimates, the 90% estimates, but in case I didn't announce it. They came in 400 and I think 80,000 under budget, which, yeah. I guess I didn't announce it, I'm sorry. Thank you. Which is really great. You know, and now it'll depend on what the real, when we go out to bid, what the real cost is. But it's good to know that, that it did come, you know, the estimators at least felt it came in under budget. And the climate, according to our owner's project manager, is quite good for construction right now. So those are those pieces. Val, I don't know if you have something on Driscoll?
Indeed, I do. We have a Driscoll School Advisory Building Committee meeting on Friday at 8 a.m. Very, very short agenda for some closeout items to vote to recommend to the Building Commission.
I thought that we had heard that the playground was going to be ready at the end of September, and it's not, and I'm just wondering if there's a new ETA for the playground.
Which part of the playground? The new ETA is before it freezes too much.
Before it freezes, okay, thank you.
So parts of the playground, just to expand on Val, parts are open already and parts are not. And we're hoping.
Well, and there are pieces that are also getting some modifications made, Mariah and Helen. So that's why there's also a little bit of remediation that's happening on some of the open areas and things like looking for shade, additional shade for part of the play areas that will be voted as a recommended item to the building commission on Friday morning.
Can I ask you a quick, oh, sorry. Not, I don't want to get too off track. Shade, does shade mean trees, Val, or like big sail shade things? What do we do for
right-
shade?
Right now, they're talking about the sail pieces. There are a significant amount of trees, but right now they're talking about adding sail to the specific area as the solution. That was the recommendation from the design team.
If I could expand on that, one of the issues with trees is you usually don't want to buy them too big to begin with so that they can grow quickly. Smaller trees grow better than bigger trees when you transplant them. And so it's going to take a while for the shade.
Yeah, no, I think that the sail things are really cool, and I wish, I think they are probably needed at other schools too, yeah. Sounds great.
All right, is that it for capital, Helen? Okay, curriculum, Suzanne.
Yeah, we had a meeting yesterday. Was that just yesterday? Time flies. And we went over MCAS trends and analysis. Dr. Fortuna led it. And so there is this presentation they did in color. It was pretty with slides. And there was a lot of information, a lot of data. So if you're interested in this, you might either watch the recording or look at the slide deck online. Just to give you kind of an overview. So our accountability, how we perform against other districts in the state, we outperform 97% of them. We're at the 97th percentile. This is just overall. And our accountability is between 87 and 97 percentile. So we're doing well that way. Our growth, student growth percentiles in English and math were English, ELA was 58.8 and math was 59. 40 to 60 is average. When you hit 60, you're doing a lot better than others in that cohort. So we were very high at 58.8 and 59. So that was very good news. And ELA, 70% of our students meet or exceeds expectations with an average score of 512. The state average is 500. And in math, we were 73% meets or exceeds expectations. with average scale score of 513. So again, we're above the average. We looked at students with IEPs. That's more of a challenge for us. Student growth was pretty good, 52.5 in ELA and 53.9 percentile in math. But our percentages that meets and exceeds was 33% in ELA and 34% in math. So that's certainly an area to take a deeper dive and to look at. And then we looked at our ELs, our English learners, and their growth percentiles in ELA was 61%. Our former ELAs, we have to track our ELAs after they graduate as English learners for 4 or 5 years. And so our former ELAs had a growth of 64%, the 64 percentile, so that was very high. And in math, again, we were at 66 percentile, and for our formers, we were at 64 percentile. So lots of good growth, still some discrepancies in some of the subgroups, but the feeling is that the work we're doing, especially in early literacy, is starting to pay off, and we're starting to see that coming up through the grades. And that really is not doing justice to the meeting, but those are some of the highlights. And our next meeting is we've changed it to November 25th. Yeah, we had some conflict. Yeah, so that's it for curriculum.
All right, thank you, Suzanne. DEIJ, Sarah. Nothing new. Okay, finance, Mariah. We've just had quite a bit of that. Is there anything?
But wait, there's more.
Okay. Right.
I promise to be quick.
Yeah.
That's my shtick. So we met on October 23rd, and a lot of the things that we met about, we've discussed tonight earlier. I'll just highlight a couple of other things. So at our meeting, in addition to the discussion we had around the building fees, we had a broader, and the vote that we took earlier, we had a broader discussion of fees. And what Susan suggested was that rather than taking up fees in their entirety every year or taking them up every couple of years, but having to take up the entire list of fees, that essentially they get chunked into a 3-year cycle. And so for next year, our plan is, or for this year, to look at this year for next year, base and beep fees, and then we are still finalizing the fees for the following 2 years. We discussed about to make the fees more balanced we had originally talked with the materials fee liaisons about having that fee be discussed next year, but we talked about pushing that to the following year. I reached out to the materials fees liaisons. I haven't heard back from them yet. So we're figuring out the fees there. As I mentioned earlier, we'll be bringing back the discussion of base and beep fees at our next meeting, which is November 13th. As I mentioned earlier, the Q1 report for FY25 will be deferred until our next meeting. And we had a nice update again of the review of position requests document, which, if you all recall, is the document which lets us see from month to month any changes in staffing and the source of funding for those. And this is, I think, turning into a really great reference document for us because it lets us see net cost of any position changes, where the funding is coming from, where that position might have been originally. So it's a really great way in between budget books of being able to follow the bouncing ball on the different positions and understand why, perhaps there was a para at Hayes last year, and all of a sudden this year they're somewhere else. Well, we actually have that documentation, so it's very helpful. Those are the key things I think I want to mention from the meeting, in addition to the many things that already came to this group tonight. The only other update I'm going to give is the accounts payable warrant, which over the past 6 weeks was $3,368,659.61. And just because it's interesting, I just wanted to highlight that among those 6 weeks, the smallest warrant was 118,000 or so, and the biggest one was over 1.5 million. So just to give you a sense of some weeks, it's just very different depending on what's coming in. One purchase or payment that I just want to highlight for the committee, beyond all the normal ones that I sometimes tell you about, and there's different things happening, is the payment. I signed off on the payment for identity protection for the Social Security number breach from last fall. So if you recall, there was the inadvertent release of some private information, and staff had a certain amount of time to be able to opt in to credit protection, and that time, I believe it was close to a year, has elapsed, and so now the payment was issued for the for everyone who opted in, and then, so that payment was affected. So I signed off on that one. And that's, I think, all I have to share. Thank you.
Thanks, Mariah. Policy, Stephen.
Thanks, Andy. All right, so we met on the 21st, reviewed the attendance policy, that's J3, for those of you tracking at home, and the code of conduct, that's J8. I think we made some good progress in the attendance policy, less so in the code of conduct, where I think we struggled to figure out what exactly a review entails. And then the meeting started off with a discussion of the Climate and Sustainability Task Force's recommendations. 3 of the 4 subgroups presented their recommendations, and there was some useful discussion around those recommendations that I think are going to help those subgroups polish them before they present them to the full school committee, I think in December.
I think that was the plan, right? December.
Okay. So coming up, we have a bunch of policies that we're still working on. One is the student code of conduct. The next is the mobile device policy, which we are drafting from contributions from principals, which have already, all of the schools have their own mobile device policy. So the challenge there is coordinating them and standardizing them. And then the other, which is a lighter lift, is reviewing the remainder of Section J, most of which doesn't seem to require much in the way of changes. So that is the remainder of November. There's some conversation going on about possibly scheduling an additional meeting in November. We should figure that out this week. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Stephen. Are there any other updates from liaisons?
I'll do one. I'm the BEF liaison, and they had their annual potluck, which I went to, and Dr. Guillory was the special guest, practically straight off the plane from Ireland, and gave, as you can imagine, what I found to be a fascinating, and would be, even if I wasn't married to somebody who was born and raised in Ireland, a fascinating account of his BEF-sponsored trip through Ireland. It was just really interesting. I felt like there were like 5 or 6 different whole topics that he just mentioned that I would love to hear like a whole half hour on. Hint, hint. So that was really great. And the BEF's always just great to spend time with.
Okay, thank you. Any other updates, Stephen?
I met a couple days ago with the Brookline Safe Routes to School. They are looking for support from the Brookline School Committee for support on bike lanes on Washington Street. So I will send around the kind of support that they're looking for more specifically in an email.
Is this something that they're going to want to have docketed in terms of a vote of support? Well, they'd sent me an email, or they sent us an email a while ago, and the ask wasn't clear.
Right.
So is it now getting clear?
The ask is clarified now. I can tell you what it is. It's they're supporting protected bike lanes in both directions along the entire length of Washington Street from Beacon Street to Route 9. What the specific request is from the school committee, I think I could further clarify how it pertains to school committee interests. So that I could send in an email. Does that help?
Is it going to be a vote?
They haven't asked for a specific vote from the school committee now.
Suzanne.
Yes, not quite a liaison, but I just want to say thank you to all the building administrators who have welcomed so many school committee members last week and this week. I've really enjoyed it. I think all of us have. And it does take time away from their day, but they've been very generous with their time. And I know many of us have gone to many schools, and I want to say thank you to the building administrators for making that happen.
All right. Would anyone like to raise any new business? Yes, Stephen.
I just wanted to ask Dr. Guillory if we had a schedule for the selection of a new ELA curriculum. I know that's a Dr. Fortuna question, but I thought I would just ask. Sorry to.
Hey, Dr. Fortuna, there you are. I want to respond to that for.
We're looking at early December for the final selection, and what we're doing now is we're gathering teacher feedback on the three programs that were put forward by our literacy specialists as meeting our needs. And we'll be having a community forum later in November.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Fortuna.
You're welcome.
I'm going to ask a follow-up. Wasn't there like a group that was going to be the selection group?
Yeah.
Or is that, I got that wrong?
There was a group that vetted 7 programs and narrowed it down to 3. And now what we're doing is we actually opened it up wider than just a committee to all of the teachers. We're going to have a parent night. We're going to have a school committee night with our curriculum subcommittee meeting. Suzanne and I have to talk a little bit about that some more, but we decided that more input would be better because this is such a large purchase for the town.
Thank you.
All right. So I see no more new business, so the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.